Et voilà, nous sommes de retour. We are back on the Tru-Mon Show, episode 147 with Arthur and Fiona from Australia. How are you, my friend?
Great.
Good, thank you.
Good.
Hi,
Nice. Huh?
Hi.
I said nice to see you back again. It's a good habit. I think it's a good habit that we get together every week like that. It's good for our vibration also. Keeps our vibration aligned and up, and that's what we need. So today again we're gonna talk about our subject of self-obsession, self-obsessed people and self-obsessed society. So I want to start first of all with the fact that myself also, I'm into this. I don't separate myself and put myself on a pedestal saying I have attained Christ consciousness here. I'm still battling and struggling with stuff in Babylon like everybody, pretty much that's what we are doing, a journey to get rid of our evil ways. But we still get caught up a lot in pleasure, leisure, and stuff that takes us away very much from the moment and come in lower vibration also. And I think with food and other addiction, especially with food, like I said before to you guys, I love potato chips, but I know I have to stop eating them. But it's stronger than me. You know, it's an obsession at one point to eat potato chips and all the junk like that. Like you said, Fiona, when you eat good food at like before I was sitting outside eating a bag of cherries. At one point, at half the bag, I had to stop. My body was telling me it was enough. But if I take a bag of chip, I can eat the whole thing. I don't. I'm not telling you I eat the whole bag of chip, but I could because the chemicals and all the nonsense in there, and our bodies are addicted to that nonsense. So maybe you can extend a little bit on that. Why, in your point of view, we get so caught up in leisure and also being we're being very lazy with our life. Most of us are not creating a magnificent dream of life. That's what we're here to dream together. We're here to dream together, to participate in the dream of life. So maybe
what you just said was exactly it.
Yeah.
Most people do not have a dream that they're creating that fulfills them and gives them the purpose to jump out of bed every morning and do something. And that basically is why we end up with all the addictions. Most people are stuck in jobs they don't really like. That's why they're endlessly pursuing leisure. And that most people have the stress of a life under the system, constantly worrying about money, ever, etc., etc. So that's why they're always looking for that pleasure. Oh, I've worked hard a week. I deserve to go out and go to the pub or whatever. That's exactly why, because we don't. And the same with all the food addictions. They only arise out of our emotional needs and wants. If we're living, and I've noticed that when we're doing things, when we're really involved in something, a project in the garden or something, or working hard, we don't eat nearly as much. If I'm sitting on the computer trying to do something, I better just go check out the pantry. I better have a look in the fridge, because I'm not doing something I really want to be doing. I'd rather be outside or doing something else. So it's basically what she said was it.
We're trying very much to cover our misalignment. I find that's what I realize. But when you're under the trauma and under the illusion, you might not perceive it that way. But once you start to open your eyes, like I said, just open your eyes and start questioning what you do, questioning your doings, you're going to realize that, hey, might be a bit of obsession there.
And also, why do we want to, it's interesting why we want to harm the bodies we've been given.
Yeah.
I mean, drugs, alcohol, all that bad food. What are we saying about who we are and what we think about who we are when we're deliberately poisoned? And we all know the cigarettes are bad. We all know the alcohol's bad, the drugs. We all know the donuts are bad, but we keep doing it. That as well is saying a lot about our emotional state of being.
There's a reggae singer, Subaja. He says the ship we use is hard to wreck. This is the thing. Where we have a ship, and me, I've been feeding bad food and stuff, and I'm still alive, vibrating. It's a body technology. It's perfect, but we're trashing it with so much nonsense. It's terrible. I realize that.
That's why we get old. Because of the trashing. So, and it is amazing that our bodies can cope with so much. I mean, not only what we directly put in, what's surrounding us, the pollution is everywhere, as we all know. So not only are our bodies coping with the stuff that we put in that's doing it bad, it's also the surroundings. Every day we're all driving our cars, we're all doing all those things that are just making everything, and yet our bodies still keep functioning. It's pretty amazing. They go till 80 or 90 with what we do to them.
Yeah, imagine if we treat them properly.
And cleaned the air and cleaned the soil and cleaned the water. We'd just keep going.
I don't know if we would live to 200 years old, but we would have more vibrancy into our life, into our everyday life. The food that you eat, you are what you eat. We cannot, for sure.
I think my body is the pantry at the moment. I think I stole the pantry over the last 3 years. But I ate it when I was, because when I let myself go back into that trauma and I went into my childhood, and I'm on the internet, and I'm arguing and debating, doing all that stuff to work out the self-obsession stuff. I'm eating, and when I'm out in the garden, I feel so crap because lately, now that I'm back out in the garden and I'm getting into projects again, my weight's starting to come off, but I don't have this appetite, and I can work all day as long as I got one thing I've got to make sure of is that this body's got water, and I'm drinking water. And then I might grab some fruit or something. And lately, I just one avocado will do me, throw a bit of olive oil and balsamic vinegar on it and some sea salt, and away I go. That'll keep me going for hours. And I just get self-obsessed projects.
The fact of overeating also is very much a self-obsession. When you overeat, that's what I've realized. I cut down my portions, and I'm still here. Like, you don't have to eat so much.
We all eat way more than we need to eat. I think it's just, if you actually go through a period where you're eating less because you're too busy or whatever, you realize your body actually functions better when you eat a bit less. I know I think it's Sardinia off the coast of Italy. They're very long lived, and they've done studies, and they realize that some of it is because basically they haven't always got enough to eat there.
Sardinia.
Yeah, I think so.
You just said Sardinia. Guess what? I'm supposed to. That's a synchronicity right there. You couldn't name me any city in the world. You said Sardinia, and 2 days ago I was talking with Jason. I'm supposed to interview him, and he's in Sardinia, Italy.
Yeah. Well, they didn't always have enough to eat, and that's why they live a long time. And so and I think I read somewhere there's an Egyptian proverb that says, "On a quarter of what I eat, I live. On the other 3/4, my doctor lives."
Yeah.
So the overeating that makes us sick, so we need to pay the doctor.
Which makes the point that probably originally we were all breatharians. I mean, if the air and the oxygen was so rich and the pollen in the air was so rich, pre the firmament coming down and all that, pre the mapping out of what's formed the self-obsession of our lives, it's quite likely, I mean, I'm not saying it's true because I don't know yet, but it makes sense that we were breatharians, because then we would have eternal lives, because our cells can regenerate. There was that scientist that put a cell in a little dish, what do they call those little?
Petri dish.
In a Petri dish, yeah. And he kept it clean. He kept cleaning it, kept feeding it, and it lived until he had to go away or something, and he left it
lived for about many, many, many years, just one cell. But then he went on holiday and he left it with someone else to look after the cell, and they forgot to feed it and clean it, and it died. But it just shows that our cells are they're built to be eternal. All you have to do is give them the right food and make sure the waste is cleaned out, and they just keep going.
And the other one was that really fascinating experiment at the Tokyo Expo 1984, and they made I think it was a glass dome, and inside they created an oxygen environment that would have been something that they thought would have been what it was like a long time ago, pre the firmament collapse and all that. And they put a tomato vine in there, and this tomato vine grew and grew and grew. And I can't remember if the expo goes for 6 months or not, but this thing kept growing after the expo finished, and it produced something like 1,400 to 1,600 fruit, and it was just continually growing. So you wonder, with all the evidence that's been discovered of the bigger animals, bigger plants, bigger everything, there's a lot of this is about, you can find on the internet how things were much bigger. So it then comes the question, pre the firmament, down where the oceans are now, underneath the Pacific Ocean, Indian Ocean, is where our ancestors used to live. And that the oxygen would even been richer down, and the pollen would have been richer. And we're all now up on the higher lands where the air is thinner. but we've corrupted the air with the oxygen, the water. We've corrupted the pollen, and with all our toxicity and pollution. So our ability to be breatharians has been deeply compromised. And possibly because of all the mapping and all the self-obsession through the generations, we've created all these complex bad behaviors that are part of this matrix that we, not only we're born into it, but our children are born into it, and no one knows what's going on, where we're going with all this, and how we're going to get out of this mess. And all we have these little residues of maybe what things were like once, you know. And so yeah, it's very interesting to think that maybe everything's so much more simple than we realize. And if another thing to think about, true freedom, if we don't have to eat like we're eating and having to, you know, hunters and gatherers and all that stuff, and we're breatharians, we have absolute freedom, total freedom in amongst paradise, you know. So again, don't believe what I'm saying about this, because, you know, maybe none of this is true. So, you know, but yeah, that stuff does my head in. It really does. It blows me away. I mean, we got evidence. I mean, when I was a kid growing up, I used to go to this place called the Theosophical Society in Sydney. I was just turned 15. The Adyar bookshop, Castlereagh Street in Sydney. I was led there by a book that I found at a dentist. I went to a dentist, and I had this voice say to me, steal it, steal it, steal me, steal me, steal this book. And I'm like 14, 15, and I'm going, okay, I'll steal it. So I stole this book that was sitting around the waiting, you know, the waiting area, and it was a book written by Edgar Cayce, The Origin and Destiny of Man. That wasn't so much the most important thing. It was at the back of the book was a stamp, the Adyar bookshop, and it led me to go to the Adyar bookshop, which drew me into the Theosophical Society as a 15-year-old kid. And I started getting lost in buying books in there, and I spent 4 or 5 years buying books and reading, and I actually went to workshops, and, you know, and this opened my eyes, because I was reading Manly P. Hall stuff, Manly P. Hall, and all kinds of books about Freemasonry and a lot of stuff that's now mainstream acceptable, things like ley lines and channeling and New Age, all this sort of stuff. And I kept passing through it all, and none of it I got addicted to, you know. But the reason why I mention it, some of these books that I remember getting contained photos from archaeologists and others, black and white photos in the 1800s of ancestors, skeletons of man, are over 30 foot tall. This is pre-Photoshop, you know, mixing, you know, even using plaster on Paris, because a lot of fossilizing things they do for dinosaurs are now made out of plaster on Paris, and they're all fake. And a lot of the museums are full of these fakes. And that was part of the PSYOP scam to create this thing about the dinosaur era and all this stuff. But there were big animals. But these big animals didn't look like many of these dinosaurs, like Tyrannosaurus Rex didn't exist. Most of these kind of creatures are just all myths. They're all lies made up by these Freemasons, who are in archaeology, in the alchemy of science, and you know, because it gets into botany and all the other realms of science. But the point was that these massive giants, which are now related to as the Nephilim and the Anunnaki and all this bullshit that came out of Sitchin with all the Sumerian tablets, all this is another occultic scam to create red herrings, you know. And I'm saying blatant red herring scams. But if the animals were that big back then, and our ancestors were that big, and everything was bigger, you know, we find fossilized remains of plants today that aren't like this. They were like, you know, like massive plants, you know. Everything was so much bigger. So we must have zoomed out. We're shrinking and shrinking and shrinking because we're zooming out. The more we're forgetting who we really are, the more we're getting lost into the stereotyping of all this mapping out, meaning we're not there anymore. We're not present anymore, or our presence of life is not present to life. And we're now in the evil, because evil, the front spelled live, right? We're no longer living the dreams we create. We're now living the mapping out. It's like, you know, when you're looking through a camera and you're zooming out, and we're zooming out, we're forgetting who we are, and we're just drifting away. And it started in the womb, and as we live our lives through all the mapping out in our heads, we're just drifting away, and we're shrinking and fading and fading, and getting lost in the mist of all these lies
Getting lost in the default state, like I say all the time. You have the choice. It's the dream of a hell or the dream of life. So if you choose the dream of hell, you're in the default state. So you might never wake up from that nightmare of Babylon. But if you do a bit of effort and you, like, if you seek, you will find. Like I said to my wife, everything is in plain sight. It's just because we're blind to it, and they want us to be blind as bats. So we don't see nothing, but it's anyone can see what I see, what you see, feel what you feel, and I feel. We're talking about life. It's simple, and we're talking about the love for life. This is what brings us here. It's not the obsession about anything. It's just we want our brothers and sisters to live in peace, but peace, not peace because peace is a contract with war, but to live in harmony. To live in harmony, you know, in good vibration and love, and that's what we need. I think we're just so lost in words and fantasy also, and we get obsessed by it, by the false, by the pseudoscience that we're very, very much absorbed. You know, we're being absorbed by all the nonsense of Babylon also. I find that's what happened to me, without questioning it. You don't question and you get absorbed, so you lose yourself in there.
I think that's what happens to all of us. We get so lost inside this pseudoscience because it really is. I mean, you know, the things like going back to dinosaurs, in their recorded books, you can go back 1,000 years. These people were already doing archaeology. Now, there's no records of any dinosaurs up until the 1800s. Nothing in anything. No dinosaurs in all their journals and things, right? Then you look at the Darwinism, you know, around the 1800s with the Darwinism and the theory of evolution, all this stuff came in. Now, these are all psyops, right? And then, you know, we're taught there were little squiggly things that came out of the water and that evolved into whatever little things that turned into Neanderthal man, whatever, all that bullshit, right? And here we are from the ape, we've become this, now we call ourselves a man, and now we're heading to the apex of our amazing abilities, right? And all this is bullshit, you know, the whole thing is a scam. And so they've tried to black us out from the idea of dinosaurs, and the Dark Ages was somewhere back there. And yet we are actually in the Dark Ages now. This is the Dark Ages. We're living totally in the Dark Ages. And the fact is that there's no first parties amongst us who lived those times, who can be present amongst us and be the witness to say, yes, I saw this, I did this, and da-da-da, and be a living testament to the truth of these claims, right? Everything's done through third parties. It's written and recorded, and people fall in love with or they believe in these claims, and so we get so mapped out in this history of this fake history that we're not there. We're not there. Who we are, each one of us, we're not here. We don't even exist in that way. All we got is this heart pumping with blood pumping and that, but everything else is this absolutely dumbed down, brainwashed drone who is dreaming other people's dreams and has no dream. So we're not even here.
That's how I felt. That's exactly how I felt before. But since I'm more in touch with greatness and expressing myself, also breaking the walls to myself, you know, that's what I have to break the walls and find the keys to the heart of gold. I'm getting there. I have a few keys. I'm missing some, but I'm getting there. I'm working on myself, and that's by myself, not my self-obsession, but I'm working on the man is working on his craft, and he will bring something out of it. But that's what I think we need to do, is just to, you know, once you start cultivating a dream, start cultivating it first of all, then you will live it. But if you each and every day cultivate your dream and also align it with the dream of life, with the dream of the whole of creation, I think you're going to create something magnificent, no matter, and you cannot stop it. That's the thing. Once we start creating an alignment with nature, also, we cannot stop the force. And it's a process like I do here. Coming here, I don't force myself to do this. It's natural. It becomes a very natural process. So realigning ourselves with we are all a fractal of source, so we have to realign with the source, with what we are, love or whatever. Even I'm lost in words tonight again, but I think we're much more than words, but that's what we have. So if not, we're not going to talk to each other.
I mean, the reason, we talk on these internet shows and we spend time on social media and we interact wherever we can in the system, but the motivation for us is that we our commitment is to reach brothers and sisters and share with them the insights to see if some spark can occur in them. We can't change anybody. You can't rescue anyone. So we don't have any motivation to save anybody or rescue anybody about anything, right? It's up to each of us who've got to take on that responsibility to want to break outside the matrix of this mapping out to do something significant. Now, the other reason that I'm talking about this because when you say we want to return to unconditional love and we all want to be that love, the sentiments of our heart is always there in everything that we're doing. It's all the essence of what we are has been with all our ancestors since they were in paradise and they fell. And all the descendants since that fall have those same sentiments of unconditional love, of freedom and truth. Everybody dreams it. We feel it. It's all around us. Yet the subtlety of this mapping out is so powerful that the self-obsession that is that mapping out continues to deceive us, right? So with us, we are still compromised. We still see the mapping out in our lives. We still see the self-obsession. We still argue with each other about shit that comes up in our patterns. And yeah, in hindsight, looking back over the last 10 years, we can see truly an improvement in less of that self-obsession and more of being present to who we are, which cannot be defined. We can't define anyone with that stuff, right? So what I'm trying to point out is that the essence of who we are has nothing to do with the mapping out of the alphabet thoughts in our head. And if we don't recognize the difference between the nonsense that are the thoughts that we've attached ourselves to that are not our dreams, and yet somehow they express our sentiments. We can express our sentiments through the words love, but we're actually still in a fallen state because we're actually not being that love. If we're being that love, there's nothing to say about love because we are that love. When we truly are being and living those sentiments, we are silent. There's nothing to say. So the reason why we are on social media and why we do these shows is because obviously our determination to keep waking up, working through these paradigms, these lies, but more importantly, is to inspire brothers and sisters all around us to wake up so that they don't form the peer pressure of the system on our children and on us. So we are not compromised into being slaves for them, right? Because the way the system works, we are all jealous lovers to each other. We all need each other in the society, in the system as civilians, as the public that go to and vote as Democrats or Republicans that go to elections and all this sort of stuff. We maintain the enslavement as white-collar slaves, blue-collar slaves, physical labor slaves, and that's no different to being whipped and belted, back in pre-overt slavery in, ancient Egypt and all the other civilizations that used overt slavery. This covert system is very, very sinister, which we've talked about in some of these other videos, right?
Yeah, and that I was saying that this afternoon to my wife, how we are oblivious to our slave state and we don't wake up from that slave state and we don't look around, to see to analyze our state of mind, what is going through in any moment. No, we're just distracted, very distracted.
Because the mapping out is what binds us to the slavery. Because the default through the belief in the mapping out. Let's just go. We'll go into this. I think we should explain this again, partly, and then we'll bring it back to this present sense situation where we all find ourselves, all our listeners and viewers, all of us. We all have the good heart. We all have the true sentiments. And wherever we go, even mum and dad, in spite of whatever shit they're working through, they have a good heart, right? But they've been mapped out. Now, the way we should look at this, let's go look at the bigger picture. For example, you look at a map of the celestial bodies, a map of the universe, a photograph showing all the stars and constellations and all this is mapped out. Now, every single thought is man, because it's man's projection of man's consciousness to the thought of everything that was mapped in the stars. right? It's like the daffodil is yellow. We map out the life form by the definitions that forms our relationship to that life form by saying, yes, this is a daffodil and it's yellow, and how we live with that, and all the scientific explanation comes with it. So it's the same when you're looking at astronomy and astrology. It's all mapped out, but it's man's thought that's projected to every single thing. So the same when you look at the universe of the Bible, of God and God's heaven, it's man's thought that's there. It's not someone else that's there. It's only man. It's always man that precedes the thought. There is no thought without man in relationship to that thought. Do you follow what I'm saying? So we map out a definition, and we pass that definition on to the innocent, our children, and we teach them to animate, as in animation, to animate the mapping out. But it's their thought being projected as the constellation Sirius, as the Anunnaki, as the reptilian shapeshifters, as the gods in the heavens, and the Jesus and all this stuff. But it's always man to the thought. So we are animating a phantasmic bullshit lie where our sentiments are dancing with the lie. We're joyfully in bliss with the lie of astronomy and astrology. And because our thoughts are there, because there's nothing else there but us, we're projecting our consciousness there. Even if we document it, we can sit there and be the astronomer, the scientist who documents the stars, and then passes that journal on to others who are scribes, and they write books about it, and that can be passed down through the generations. But everyone's animating the story of the stars, and it is a his story.
Without never confirming it. That's what we were saying the last show we had together. Like, we can tell, you can tell me there's this and that up there, but I will never experience it anyway, because I cannot have a viewpoint of everywhere on Earth at once. So it's just, I don't know.
Well, we make claims, right? It's true. I didn't get too caught up in, but there was a discussion involving Patrick Riley, who's in America, with another guy called Scott Freeman, who's, I don't know where he's from. He might be English, I don't know where he is, but about a vacuum, and they just claim that there's a vacuum in space. And this all comes into the flat Earth thing and the whole argument about flat Earth, right? But again, remember, this is all mapping out. The whole thing with Eric Dubay and the flat Earth thing is mapping out a definition. Now, like I explain it again, like you look at the life form, you can see the life form. You can see it moving with the breeze, and you can see the sunlight glistening in the moisture, right? And we call it daffodil is yellow, and all the scientific explanation. But the mapping out of the definition is so powerful that even though our senses are perceiving the reality of the life form, as we sense the perception of everything we see in the celestial bodies, meaning that everything we see with our senses is true, but everything explained to us about what we see is not, right? So that's no different to the telescope and the microscope. We can be looking through the telescope and our head is spinning with already the mapping out of every definition that was put in our heads from the womb, all the way through the brainwashing of school to university that led us to be the scientists or researchers, whatever. So that when you're looking at that life form we call the daffodil is yellow, there's not a single thought in our head that's coming from the life form. It's coming from us projecting our consciousness to that life form, and we're dancing inside the animation. And this is social engineering, because by projecting all that nonsense, all that alphabet talk that involves numerology and mathematics and all that, time and space and you name it, we are actually dancing inside the animation of the character that we form as the daffodil is yellow. So this is no different to watching Donald Duck or Mickey Mouse or the Roadrunner or Bugs Bunny. Bugs Bunny is the daffodil is yellow, and it's dancing in the animation of the social engineering of our headspace, because we're now in a cartoon, which is the mapping out of the celestial bodies, which is the mapping out of the whole of man's body. It's the mapping out of the soil and underneath inside the earth. And all the documentation, so everything's been mapped out, but it's animation. It's definition, right? Our sentiments are there. We fall in love with these things, these lies. But all this time, we're not there.
And you say it, we fall in love with the definition. We don't rise in love with the definition. We fall in love. And that's one of our biggest issue, is that we have fallen so much and we keep falling and falling. We should rise.
Exactly. And I think this getting into the definition, this is what the whole education system, because education is mapping out, right? It's mapping out a paradigm that is the matrix. And the relationship we have with Bugs Bunny and Donald Duck is the relationship we have with mathematics, with the number 1, number 2, and number 3. They're just cartoon characters, and we animate them, and we perform. We're actually inside this hologram, you know, and we are not only the master puppeteers pulling the strings. We don't even know our own strings that we're pulling. We've lost the connection, right? That we're doing it to ourselves. So that's part of the madness of this
And
social engineering.
What you're referring to, I have experienced it with the flat earth stuff. At the beginning, I was very excited, very absorbed. I was trusting everything that Eric Dubé was saying, like pretty much without using scrutiny. But at one point, you came onto my journey, or Jabo or someone, but then I started to question things a bit more deeper, and I realized that I was just obsessed by the definition, and I wasn't experiencing nothing of that. Like, I'm not saying that the horizon is not horizontal. That's probably the only thing I'm experiencing.
Well,
But the rest,
you're scrutinizing, and this is the thing that we say to all the listeners who watch these videos and who read our stuff. You know, do not believe anything we say. Use scrutiny, scrutinize. Now, don't be in a car driving so fast, meaning don't have your head spinning as you're reading. Slow right down. Otherwise, if you go too fast with your head spinning, with all the mapping out already there, everything outside the window will be a blur. You will not pick up, make sense of what you're listening to. So you've got to learn to shut down the conversation of the mapping out inside your head, because that is the social engineering of the ego, the emotion that forms the fake persona. You don't filter all that through that stuff, because if you do that, you're always looking to meet what already you believe, and if it doesn't, you ignore it and put it to one side. So you'll never, ever come to the heart of what's been done to you, what the social engineering of all the stereotyping, you know, that's formed the fake persona of the animated character that we call Arthur Cristian, under the name of the birth certificate, because we are animating, we are raising up the animation of a fantasy, because it's all fantasy, and the system is fantasy. It's a dream world of Alice in Wonderland. It really is. Or Dorothy down the yellow brick road. That's what we are in the system, waking up and go to bed with that. But if we use scrutiny and we learn to slow down the chit-chat in our head, learn to recognize it, but learn to not get caught up in it, learn to separate from it enough so you can sit there and be vigilant and discerning and scrutinize what you are actually thinking. Where are these thoughts coming from? Because if you can get your head around this, when we talk about the stars, we are projecting our thought to the star, and we are animating the story, the history about that star. But because the star is in connection to the constellation and the whole mapping out of a universe, we're inside this universe, one story, which is the default of the system. We fall into the system because while we are enchanted and lost in these thoughts that keep us seduced and enchanted, we are not there, right? Because the explanation, the definition was made up by another man. And we are projecting. So it's no different to someone who sits there and draws the cartoon character of Donald Duck. And in every piece of every screenshot, you've got just a slight movement of the picture. So when you're flicking through the pages, Donald Duck is moving, right? The history of all the science, this is the snake, psychology, science, scion, you know, you'll find this is so many things. And this
And the
point.
verses to verses in the Bible, you know, you have verses in the Bible, you have verses, you know, universe.
And,
Yeah.
and the point, the getting to this is that if we can't slow down enough to observe the spinning of the spell, this lying that's been put in our heads from so young, we will never ever wake up in spite of our sentiments. We can talk about love, we can drift. You know, I've met many backpackers, they're drifting from country to country. They're all talking about universal love. The whole New Age movement is full of people about love and consciousness and all that, but they are in the definition of the cartoon character of Donald Duck set to the story of whatever Donald Duck's been performed. Because Donald Duck is a good guy, you know. He's, you know, he doesn't want to do harm, you know. And you'll find a lot of characters, they don't want to do harm. But if when you're inside the animation and your heart, your good heart has been tricked into performing as the lawyer, as the barrister, as the judge, as the scientist, as the doctor, as the railway worker, as the garbage collector, as the mum and dad, as the, you know, the teachers at the schools, and on it goes, right? Our good heart is destroying everything.
Yeah.
Because we haven't used scrutiny enough to realize what the hell are we doing? Because look at the mess we've got ourselves into up to now. It's all good people.
Our heart desire is killing us.
Very few people could possibly kill another man. There's not that many of us that really truly want to kill another man, who actually, when you confront them, they don't know how to go to the next stage and actually kill someone, right? When you get past the bluff, when you can get past it, when you have no fear of death and you can confront people, you discover this over and over and over again. Most people, when it really comes to it, in spite of their anger, in spite of their rage, in spite of how much they want to dominate, when it really comes to the next stage, very few want to go and fire the fatal shot, right? It takes a lot of trauma, it takes a lot of self-obsession and all kinds of other stuff that leads someone to want to take the life of another man, you know, yet alone children who grew up to take the life of animals and creatures and knock down forests and all that. Most people, you know, given the opportunity to be brought up without this stuff, that's beyond them. This to do harm is beyond them, right?
That brings me to my other point that I had is our arrogance with life is unbelievable. How much we're arrogant with life, arrogant with others, arrogant with life, and we think that everything is due to us. We have to do the minimum to get the maximum. You know, all this kind of.
Well, that's practicing the animation and falling in love with it. We've fallen in love with the history of the animation that we've projected, that all we see is the belief of what we believe to be true. So your arrogance is formed around that because you think you're right with your perception, or you think you're right, whether, you know, whatever part of that ego that you claim, right? It's just we're practicing the reflection. We get so caught up in the mirror, falling in love that we don't think there's anything else there. And so there's your arrogance. And when it comes with that insular thing of, you know, that you have all the weapons, you have all the power, and, you know, you're part of the occult world and you can dominate, you know, that's also practicing the animation, the character. It doesn't mean all their weapons gives them all the power. They've actually got nothing. They truly have nothing because they have no soul. And if they don't have a living soul, they're trapped in the illusion of spiritual suicide, right? Because that's the consequence. So even though they may run around and play in the sandpit of this matrix and think that they've got all tanks and nuclear weapons and they can play with harp and create weather patterns and produce cyclones and all this stuff, don't get caught up in any of it, because all these people are truly dying. This is what you're witnessing is death. You're watching them die before your eyes. If you wake up and can learn to disconnect from it, in spite of it all going on around you, you are not dying. And in spite of what they want to do to your body, you're still not dying. Even if they want to take that life of that body, you have not died. But when you are lost in the animation of that fantasy dream world, you are dying. And if you're lost in the emotion with all that, you are truly dead. You're gone. So unless we can spark people and snap and re-prick that consciousness and bring it so they are creating their living dream, they don't have one. There's nothing there. And if there's nothing there, then what's there was stolen and filled by the occultists and by all those under the occults, which is mum and dad and brothers and sisters and the wider communities, everything we've been exposed to that forms our lives in the system, right? That's what's filling it up. So our thoughts being projected to the mapping out of the stars and to the biology and the whole physiological aspects of our bodies and with our names and brown hair and blue eyes and everything is defining this. We're not there. They're not our dreams, you see. So unless we use scrutiny, it can make sense because it's our senses. We did explain this in one of the videos. Senses cannot be impersonated. What you sense is unique to you, and the experience of what you sense forms your living dreams. If you notice what you are sensing, touch, taste, feel, smell, hear, see, when you sense and you give your life energy to those senses, you are expanding the living soul of the man that you are. But when you are lost in the definitions, right? We talk about potato chips. That's not a potato. There's nothing natural about it anymore. That's a fantasy about what was a potato, and we've turned into the animation of potato chips. So we're eating the fantasy of a potato. We're eating the fantasy of a lettuce because it's been sprayed with chemicals and all that stuff and been treated and changed. The same with so much of our fruits today and the grafting and all these things that we do that are not natural. We can truly get lost in the animation of the mapping out.
You were talking about sensing life and stuff like that, and that's exactly what I just posted a video on my other channel. I said we are on the way to experience and sense life to the fullest. We are on the way because I'm still not there. I'm trying to find the keys to break the walls to myself and really experience life to the fullest. That's what I need. We need more experience. It's not what I want. It's not a want, or it's something I need. And we all need to have more experience and live life to the fullest.
So you're now in the battle. It's not a battle as in the way we go to war. It is the challenge to recognize the lies that are all synthetically introduced into our lives that we gave our life energy to. Because where we've given our life energy to these lies, they've become part of the fabric of social engineering that's compromised us. Now, the more it's cloaking, it really is like out of the Star Trek cloaking. We become cloaked, and we do the cloaking because we're the ones pulling the strings of the lie. So you have to extricate out these thoughts and realize these are not our dreams. Our soul is not there. Who we are is not present to the mapping out. So getting outside of all of this requires vigilance, discernment, and scrutiny, right? Because who you really are cannot be defined by anyone. We can't define who you are. Fiona cannot define who this man is, and this man can't define what this woman is, right? So we need to recreate the space for our children to rise up with their dreams through direct sensory experience with nature. So they form the natural consciousness of their living dream. And the more that they expand through their senses, their living dream of their living soul, right? The influence of the mapping out will not seduce them, will not distract them, and they will remain intact and they won't be fallen into this lie. You comprehend, because the mapping out is nonsense. We are not sensing the mapping. We are imagining. We are pretending to perform the animation of the fantasy of the celestial bodies, or of flat Earth, or of the daffodil is yellow, or of Fiona Cristian, the name, or Arthur Cristian, the man, the name, and all the writings and alphabets that we do. This is mapping out too, guys. So it's so interwoven, this lie. And when we write and talk to each other, if we're not conscious, we continually default to the mapping out, to the matrix, where we think who we are is there. And so we talk on behalf of the definition and say that Donald Duck is part of my reality. That Donald Duck is permaculture. That Donald Duck is system science. That Donald Duck is a vacuum, right? But it's only our thoughts being projected there that we entertain. So we project our consciousness into the definition that has us fall from what we sense, and now we are caught up in the animation. That's occultic seduction of Adam, Eve, apple, and snake. It's the same shit. And we do it to who we are, and we do it to each other. So in spite of everything we've talked about in all these videos, each of us must be sincere and pure in intention to sense the lie that are the thoughts of a definition that we did not create as our dreams, because there's no truth there. So we got to catch ourselves out remaining attached to the definitions, because if we do, there's our potato chips, there's our popcorn in the kitchen, there's our electricity, gas and water, there's the motor cars, right? And while we continue remaining attached to the definitions, we will still want the system. We still want Donald Duck and Daffy Duck, and we still want Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny. We still want because everyone around us is animation. Janik is animation, if we don't sense the man. Arthur is animation to most people because they can't sense the man. They only animate what they project about what they think this man is. Same as the daffodil is yellow. The plant never told us.
Hold on. Someone has commented something very, very on point in the chat, and I have to mention it because it flashes in my face. Life has a population of 1, and we are all part of it. The Matrix has a population of 0. It's impersonal by nature and only mirrors life. You know, this is big because that's what we have in our face, and the binary computer language, 1 and 0, 1 and 0. So that's very good, this analogy there. Big up, hip up enforcer.
That's all definition. See, exactly. The ABC and the 1, 2, 3 is the fertile soil of the occults which we rise up all the definitions out of. You see, if we're not educated into a language that's a fantasy base, we cannot entertain the fantasy of the constructs and the concepts that come out of them. Hence, what we're saying last week's show and other shows, the unidentified floating objects of the British Empire that were Freemasons, the occultists, who were sailing on the seas with their high masks and their spinnakers and all, they're wearing those high pointy hats, right? They are Martians on UFOs. They're coming across the waters, bringing fantasy with them, a dream world of lies to the man on the land. And the man on the land is looking at it going, Mike, where are these people from? What's natural about any of this, right? And then when these Martians start talking in Martian talk, it's gobbledygook to the man on the land because it's going right over their bloody heads. They cannot comprehend anything, nothing. They can sense the man. They can sense the life of the man, but they cannot make sense of all the animation that has them wear the clothing and the language they talk and all the other stuff, because it's all make-believe, it's all crap. So the same trick is applied today with the alien invasion, with UFOs, unidentified floating objects, right? Flying objects, and on it goes. So this trickery keeps forcing us to default, right, to the animation where Donald Duck lives, where Mickey Mouse lives, where William Shakespeare lives, where Julius Caesar lives, where William the Conqueror lives, because they are all animation. We are not there with them right now in the living. We're in the history of the animation. And we're performing the characters we are projecting. So the quantum physics, the basics of the 1 and 0 digits, the forms, the pixelation of computer monitors and digital data streaming and all the things we do, all of it is bullshit.
Yeah.
Right? And we're destroying reality all the time while we're still raising up this dead technology, dead everything.
And we just, what you said about the arrogance, it's because of our lack of sense that we are arrogant about about life and nature, because you said before, oh, we can't sense everything of consciousness. When we're truly conscious, we can sense everything, but it's this disconnection, this slow tuning out of our senses that make us arrogant about life and make us able to chop down the tree, drive the car, kill the animal to eat it, all those sorts of things. If we were truly sensing that cow, we would never slit its throat and cut it up to eat, because we would sense that life.
True, because if our connection to the source is not broken, we will sense the whole of life. So if our connection is broken, it's because of many, many stuff in Babylon that we get absorbed by, and we fall into it directly, like many rituals, many satanic rituals and stuff that we perform on the behalf of the overlay, or call it whatever you want. But yeah,
we're obsessed with, that is clouding our senses. So we have all the justifications and reasons why we slit the throat of that cow. Oh, meat is good for us. We need it to be strong. You know, all those justifications that we got, and also not being able to feel that animal as a living thing. I mean, it's like, I know Arthur mentioned last weekend we lost one of the little dogs we're looking after, and we were all looking for her for hours and hours and hours, and we finally found her. But it was this thing, I remember Arthur one time said, you know, every life is so precious, you know, just this little fluffy white thing. But we were all just like, we have to find her, because her life seemed so precious at that moment, because we didn't know if she was safe, if she was dead, if she was anything. And it's the same with every little spider, every little fly, everything you find in your garden. It's all precious.
And to show that to your children also is very important. Like, I was just sitting outside in the driveway before sun gazing, just sitting in the sun and eating cherries with Gavin and my wife. And Gavin suddenly says, look, Daddy, he says, he said, we're sitting in front of the sun eating cherries while other people are sitting in front of the TV eating popcorn.
Exactly.
So it's a whole different vibration. When you reconnect to the whole of life, it's a different vibe. You get rid of the nonsense also easy, without effort.
That is the challenge, and it doesn't have to be that hard. But the point is that our kids still going to school. They're there to be trained in animation. So all the while we use these alphabet thoughts to project the living. Like the daffodil is yellow, we're actually impersonating the life form. So all the while we are impersonating reality, as in the celestial bodies, astrology, astrotheology, you know, everything from numerology, and we are the one directing our consciousness into those thoughts. We energize our presence to that. So while our presence is to the nonsense, the definitions, we are animating the characters that were formed out of the definition that was explained to us as children, right? So we are now acting as imposters. We are impersonating the celestial bodies. We're impersonating the stars. We're impersonating the trees and nature. We're impersonating brothers and sisters. We're impersonating consciousness. We're impersonating God and spirituality. We impersonate everything because we are the one acting on behalf of God. We are the one acting on behalf of the stars. We are the one acting on behalf of everything that's defined. So this is one of the greatest problems, because when we impersonate what we now call the cow, and our head is spinning in the matrix of the animation, all that definition that mapped out the cow, we can perform the ritual, the satanic ritual, to kill the cow, even though the cow never told us to do it and never gave us permission to take its life, because it has another purpose. We can't sense its purpose, right? Yeah. So it's the same when we chop down trees and we chop everything down. You know, we have to sense, because nature will let us do things.
Seems like the default state is tearing everything apart around us.
Yeah, because we are animating. You see, when you're in the system, we represent. We'll go back to this again because it all ties in, and repetition is important. And I do this a lot. Now, here's another one I use a lot. Little Mary, I use this Little Mary analysis again. Little Mary is man. Little Mary is us, the living. Little Mary is present with the presence of life. We can pre-sense Little Mary. We can touch, taste, feel, smell, hear, see Little Mary, the man. But all the time she was trained to project the nonsense of Alice and Wonderland. It's only Little Mary's consciousness projected into the history of Alice that causes Little Mary to represent Alice. You see, Alice is not present with the pre-sense of life. We cannot sense Alice. And we cannot sense Wonderland because it doesn't exist. Right? So all the while we get caught up in Little Mary's performance of Alice in Wonderland, even if she does it in front of 100,000 people because she's practiced it so well. And we all stood up at the end of the show and applauded and go, Yahoo! Well done, brilliant! Oh, bravo, bravo! You know, it's still not proof that Alice exists, that Alice is present amongst the living, right? So if we cannot sense the difference between reality and fantasy, we will be so lost in the matrix of the law, of the court system, of the politics, because the court system with all its statutes, the whole system of politics, and all the history books that forms the background, the default background to democracy and constitution and Magna Carta and all that is fantasy. Because Alice is in the history books. Alice is everything that was defined to us by everybody out there. But Alice is not here now. And yet what isn't here and now has been raised up with such power that we fall underneath it and we say, yes, almighty power, please rule us with your authority, right? And it can get so traumatic. And this is how you form trauma, because you get so caught up performing the animation of the characters of Alice in Wonderland that Little Mary can turn around and say, Alice exists. And we would say to her, okay, well, bring forward Alice. Let's talk to Alice. We want to talk to Alice from Alice tongue. We don't want to hear Alice with you acting as Alice, because at the moment it's fraud. You are representing Alice, right? Represent. This is impersonating what cannot be present amongst the living. So it's the same as the whole court system. We represent the name. We represent the daffodil as yellow because we are acting as imposters. We've hijacked the life form and we're performing the social engineering under cloaking, under the hood, right? The brotherhood, sisterhood. We're under the hood. The hood being the explanation, the instruction, right? Education, suggestion, the definition. Now, this is, some of you have heard this many times, but if you cannot make sense of this and use scrutiny to separate the thoughts in your head that are not your dreams, then you are representing the definitions that were made up by the occultists who formed the alphabet language where all the constructs and concepts of English came out of. Because if you don't know English, you won't know science. If you don't know alphabet language, you cannot know mathematics or geometry, right? All the measurements and the time and space constructs and concepts of, you know, size and proportions and width and, you know, distances and locations. And, you understand what I'm saying? Because commerce, the system of commerce, the economy is all this fantasy. The stock market, the money is created and issued into the money supply is this. We're just renting intellectual property. We are representing ideas that others have made, and we're directing our consciousness into those thoughts because it was all mapped out to us through the education, through the television, through the medias, through advertising billboards, through mum and dad talking around the house, through everyone else that come in and out of our lives, through the furniture that we live in and the houses that are built. The social engineering continues to lock us in to Donald Duck and Daffy Duck, because that's who the judges are. They are truly Donald Duck, Daffy Duck, and you walk in there as the Easter Bunny, you know, and the Tooth Fairy, you know, and you don't know who you are or what you are.
Exactly.
And if you don't know who you are, what you are in the emotion, because little Mary is under the emotion. She is emotionally attached to the character, and she loves performing the pantomime of Alice in Wonderland. So she'll go into the bedroom, take all the toys out, take it into the living room, set up the whole pantomime and perform it. And Mum will come in and say, it's time to go to bed. And she says, no, I want to keep playing, because she's so attached and she becomes so arrogant and so self-absorbed in it. And this is what adults do in the pantomime of our lives in the system, right? Because we've got no sense anymore. We can't sense all our brothers and sisters around us who have been trapped as the props on the stage and the characters to perform the covert system of slavery as Wonderland.
It's interesting if you're having problems, you know, discerning what is what. Just imagine the system's gone, bang, it all collapses overnight. Now what are you left with? You know, there's no computers, there's no power, there's no nothing. And how long will it take before you start to forget about the days? You don't know what day it is, you don't know what time it is, you don't know any of that, because it's not present in the life that you're now surrounded by. As someone wrote to us and said, oh, what do you eat? And we said to her, well, imagine you're in a food forest and there's no supermarket down the road. How do you eat? You know, if you're having trouble discerning what's of the matrix, what's the mapping out and what's not, just imagine none of that's there and you're just surrounded by nature. How do you go about things? How do you eat? What are you thinking of? And all that system stuff, how soon would it just start disappearing from your brain, because you got nothing just reinforcing it to you day after day after day?
Exactly, and that's how we are actually designed to be in nature. So we would certainly find a way to make things work, I'm sure. I would like to look at signs now that, you know, the one of the goals we said to do this show is to be less self-absorbed, because I am also self-absorbed still, and I want to clear out that programming from me. We're not saying we're not self-absorbed here. We all are at some degree, but it's to minimize.
We're acting.
Yeah.
Self-obsession is acting. We're acting the animated characters.
Yeah.
That's what self-obsession is.
Yeah. So I would like to look at some signs that I found that we could be, and that is something that probably, Arthur, you experience a lot because you argue with people on Facebook about all kinds of stuff. They come and poke you, and for sure you're going to say something. You cannot stay silent. We have stayed silent enough. It's time to speak out. And that's it. Sometimes you deal with people that are very self-absorbed, and we try to make them comprehend our point of view, and sometimes it's hard. So people, first of all, people that are always on the defensive, you know, it's a sign that you're self-absorbed. If they do not see the world from another person's eyes, this is the thing. If you cannot connect to someone for recognizing someone as a teacher, you know, because everyone you meet in your life, you should consider them as teachers, because we all have something to teach to each other. That's
they remind us of who we really are. Reality, nature, always reminds us of who we really are. Yeah. You see, what you're saying is the sentiments are powerful. However, the seduction of the system will continue having us represent what we now call the cow, because the cow will not be in our life. You see, what you're saying is great, because we should be sensing the cow. So the presence of the cow is on our radar, on our sensory radar. Everything about the life of the cow is sensed by us on our radar. But when we are lost in the self-obsession, performing the animation of the explanation, the definition, that mapping out, right? The cow is not there. The life form is not there. The story about the cow is there. And the relationship the cow is to the butcher shop and the abattoir, and the relationship the cow to the trucks and the petroleum companies and the roadworks and all the local councils, state governments and federal governments, and all that's the machinery of administration and government and taxation comes with the explanation of the cow. So that you can go to the butcher and then have it at home and chop it up into T-bone steak, right? And be lost in the animation of the eating something that's dead, because the cow is not present. The cow, its presence of life is not present to us, right? So disconnecting from self-obsession is to stop acting on behalf of what already exists and allow what exists to be present to us, and we sense its purpose and allow it to become us. So we don't project the definition onto what exists. Hence this Scott Freeman, we should put the link in the about section as an example. He claims there's a vacuum. We're saying, Scott, bring forward the vacuum. Don't you act on behalf of the vacuum. I don't want to hear that come from your tongue. Bring forward the vacuum. It's simple, bro. Let's directly experience the vacuum without you representing it. Let's all go to the vacuum and hear it from the vacuum itself. Okay, that's no different to, look, little Mary, we don't want to hear about Alice from you. We want to hear it directly from Alice. We want to sense Alice and the life of Alice. This is no different to the Bible bashers. We don't want to hear it from you. We want to hear it, sense it directly from the Creator itself. We don't want a third party representative acting on behalf of God, because that's all animation. We want direct sensory experience so that the presence of the Creator is present to the living that is us. So it's the living in first party with the living first party. There's nothing else going on, right? It's undefined. Let's have the undefined Creator interconnect with the undefined man, meaning no one's defining what that is to us. So self-obsession is disentangling from our attachment to the definitions, where we form bonds that we believe is the version of reality that it's true. So people like Scott Freeman will fight for the vacuum because it has a place in the history of his animation that he has formed as his version of reality, where he claims is his living truth. Fair enough. But when you inculcate another man with that, the innocence, and you are not conscious of what you're doing, you will brainwash and subject everyone to perform in third party, little Mary acting on behalf of Alice, because Alice can't come forward. It's the same when you go, hello, Macquarie Bank, please talk to me. Anybody there? Hello, Supreme Court, anybody there? Hello, Judge, anyone there? Hello, anything that's defined, right? No man will come forward, right, and claim that they are that. They act in third party as judge, but they are not the name on the birth certificate. It's not the name of who the man really is. It's a character, an animation of a character that they're performing, right? Now, this is the big one. If we're not conscious of this, we are performing the ritual of a curse. Because while we perform the lie of the vacuum, while we perform the lie of the cow, while we perform the lie of anything that was mapped out to us, we are destroying reality by destroying already who we are, because we're fucking lying. We're lying. And the curse is the processing of the lie. And so we are animating the lie and energizing it with our life energy and expanding it, like that thing we did in the show, right? We're expanding it. And when you get two people doing it, you got one opposite the other. And we go last week again, right? And then inside the middle of us is flux. And we're trapped because we do not know who we are. We're not alive. We're not passionate. We don't have any dreams, you see? And it's there.
Exactly. We don't have any dreams, nothing to look for when you wake up in the morning. So you just repeat the same program. That
defensiveness you talked about is because of the attachment. if little Mary wasn't attached to the idea of Alice, she wouldn't get offended when it was suggested, hey, you know, you're not Alice. And the same with someone who is bringing forward there's a vacuum, or is bringing forward flat earth, or is bringing forward anything new age. It's because they think they are, that who they are is in that definition. And that's why they get defensive when you challenge the definition, because they feel like who they are is being invalidated and challenged
because
and questioned.
it's the social engineering.
Yeah, exactly, because they have been trained to think that this is who they are. And so if you're attacking that belief system, you must be attacking them,
The man.
the man. Even if you tell them you're not, most of the time.
And this is the base of the law. The whole system of the law works like this. And if you know the difference, you can defeat them every time, no matter what claims these people make as lawyers, barristers, judges. And you can free every man from every court because of this too. Every jail. You can free them. All the innocent who are trapped under this lying. Because it took all the lying to lead a man to break the law, to let a man to go to jail. This even comes to the point where a man has lost their way so much that they've committed a crime, but they're under the duress and they're under the horrific emotion and trauma. Many, not, look, some people are brutal and they intentionally, malevolently plan. And these people need to be dealt with. But the occultists are that, because it took malevolent intent to create this system that we're in now for the murder and the mayhem and the chaos of reality to unfold. And to keep us that way, to keep everything locked inside so no one can break outside of it, because it's the only way they maintain covert power and control over everybody, right? And you'll see how the political process behind the law and the law itself, how it's applied, works like this. So there's a lot of, most of our brothers and sisters are innocent. So when the fact of the animation, of the mapping out is proven to be fake, then everything that's consequential to that is dismissed and written off. Because anything in association with it is also part of the fantasy. So then comes, who are the perpetrators that started this in the first instance? And that's when you start looking at the occultists face to face, as the faces you see across social media, as the faces you see in every area of life behind positions of power, whether it's the Roman Catholic Church or the Jesuits, whether it is the Church of England, or it doesn't matter, whether it's in politics, whether it's prime ministers, right? The occults is the practice of monotheism. Monotheism is at the root of all occults. One God, one story, one history, one law, one definition, right? It requires the lie of one definition that they uphold and bring everyone unto it. Everyone must comply and acquiesce to the one definition, because those of the occults claim that to be the truth and the justification of their rights to that, right? This is one theism. We raise up the definition as God, and it becomes the false idol that allows us to be underneath Macquarie Bank, underneath the Commonwealth of Australia, underneath the taxation department, underneath the public service utilities, underneath DOCS, the Department of Children's Child Service, wherever it is. And the horror that comes out of all of these things, because everybody's lost in the animation, being provoked by the police, by agencies, by people who have all sold out to this stuff. It's another ball game, and it's horrific stuff. And this is the curse being processed. All the occultists are processing this lie too, and they are experiencing the effects upon them, right? Hence all those civilizations all went down one big bang, which we mentioned in the last week's show. The penny hasn't dropped for a lot of these occultists yet, but it will. But will it be too late for them, right? So forget Babylon, that it's going to help us. Forget anything that's going to come out of Babylon, because nothing will help it, because fantasy does not solve anything of the living. We need the living to deal with the living. You cannot default to fantasy, to nonsense, to lying, right? To deal with reality, because that continues the confusion. And while we maintain confusion, we allow them to have power over us over all of us, right?
Yeah.
And we'll allow them to mobilize forces of brothers, sisters into armies who then sail across the oceans or fly these days or whatever and invade other lands of Afghanistan and Syria, and although even though those countries were already decimated over and over and over again by these practices to prepare them for the one monotheism, one world language, one world consciousness, one world law, right? And everyone will be transgendered, because you cannot have a living man in it. Every man must be Alice or Donald Duck or Easter Bunny or Tooth Fairy, sexually stereotyped, alienated.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Another point of self-absorbed people, if we become also less self-absorbed, we're going to have longer lasting relationship with our spouse, with our close ones. The relationship will be much stronger also, but often what breaks the family and stuff like that is also that long-lasting relationship that we forget to build because of self-obsession. So I think we have possibility to have much better relationship with each other if we. The reason why I'm still married after 14, 15 years, it's because I'm not. So I realized it today when I was reading that. I said that must be why we're still together, Kim. After 15 years, we're not very self-absorbed. She's very, very forward to help people always. She's like me, very traumatized about the world, but I think we're becoming less self-absorbed each other, and that helps us grow a great deal.
Well, it's also as you lose a bit of your self-obsession, you become more able to sense each other too, and so then you look past the words and past the whatever is being displayed at the moment to really sense the heart of that man or woman that you're interacting with. And that's part of the why the relationships carry on, because it's so often you see relationships going haywire, and really the only problem is getting lost in the words, getting lost in the definitions, and no longer sensing the true heart of that man or that woman. And we all know that the words we use can lead to so many misunderstandings between people, because they just cannot sense beyond the words, or they haven't stopped to be able to sense beyond the words to realize what is. Just the same as if someone's working in the garden and you point out something about what they've done in the garden that perhaps wasn't the best idea or something, and that's taken, they don't sense the intention, which is just for the good of the garden, and it's taken as, oh, but you're attacking me and I'm this and that and defensive and all those things that you've mentioned. Again, that's a self-obsession. That comment about the garden has to be about me, so I've got to get upset about it because I feel like I'm being attacked. It's the same with our relationships. So many people, just the self-obsession means them to see everything as an attack if they're not careful, or as aggradation, fuel for the ego, all that sort of thing.
Well, that's because, again, it's it only happens in the system, right?
Exactly.
Alice only exists in the Wonderland. There's no Alice outside Wonderland. It's the same with the court systems and the banks and all that. They're only in the Wonderland. They're not outside it. When you go outside to reality, you don't find any of this. You may find the remains of what were mountains and trees being destroyed to turn them into the Macquarie Bank and commercial markets and motor cars. But all this is fantasy. It's all animated characters. A motor car is an animated character. It has no soul. There's nothing. It has no living purpose for the living dream of life. It's man as slave performing the Alice to Wonderland. We perform the car. We perform the matrix, right? So everything that comes out of the matrix is performed by us. So relationships in the same way. We perform the relationship that we have to the matrix. The emotion belongs in Wonderland. So all the justifications that brings about divorce or brings about even relationships, in most cases, are formed out of the Wonderland, right? Because the mapping out was going on before the relationship came together. And it was the mapping out that formed the relationship to fall apart. And it's the mapping out in every possible way that fucks everything and everything beyond comprehension for most of us still now.
So many relationships are based on it's totally not unconditional. It's all conditional. It's like, well, I love you and I want to be in the relationship with you, but you have to be fulfilling these definitions for me to fit into someone I want to have a relationship with.
How much
and
money?
That's the huge basis of most relationships. I want someone who's going to nurture me at night, who's going to, massage my back and I want this and I want that. And if that man or woman suddenly wants to change something about the way they're doing, because we aren't truly loving them unconditionally, they no longer fit into the definition of what is acceptable behavior for us in the relationship. And that's where we start then getting discontented with them, and because they're not meeting our standards. They're not performing to what we want. And so that's when we have problems. We start trying to control what's happening, and no, but you can't be like this, and you upset me when you do this, and this makes me feel like this is this.
Well, the animated characters, they get fed by the animation that is movies and social media and all the soap operas on television, all the soap operas of community life all around, and all the shit that's played out in the newspapers and on social media. And so while you're lost in the animation and everything's default to the system, you can fall out of love with someone who you thought we were in love with like that because of something that came in your head, making you think, hang on, I don't have that. I don't have that with him. I don't have that with her. And that can become so significant. And because everything's becoming accepted, because everyone else is getting divorced, nothing wrong about it. Which is another subject, because we shouldn't even be getting together to have a divorce. That shouldn't even be happening, right? Because it means still we don't even know who we are. So there's so much going on in the social engineering that forms a woman to a goddess, that forms a man to an arrogant prick. And this includes me. I've been an arrogant prick for most of my life because I used to, it was the only thing I had. But to survive in the system, because everything, when you look back in hindsight, I won't go through all my childhood in that, but it's what makes us what we are. But it's still an animated character. So, we've seen this before our eyes. People come in with this dream. Now, again, we stress the point. Unless you can hold the bigger picture of the living dream of life, meaning your soul has expanded. You know who you are, and you can hold your living soul, right? And no one can steal that from you. If you can't hold it, then you're living the lie that acts as the soul that you carry, and you believe who you are is in the definitions of the man that comes with the freedom and the truth and all the stuff. Now, we've had a lot of people live with us 6 months, year and a half, 6 years, 2 weeks, 6 weeks, doesn't matter. It's staggering when the social engineering kicks in and we are not on their radar anymore, because their attachment to the fake persona that they believe that define who they believe they are is still being protected. And it's inside this ball of hell where destruction is issued out of. Right? And it's devastation, because it is absolute destruction to the very essence of the sentiments that brought them to come to be with us in the first place. It's why people get divorced. It's why people can't stay together and work together. It's why people, and this gets into there's a whole lot of stuff about this, because it's all trauma, because the lie of who we believe we are that was defined is trauma, because we're energizing an animated character that doesn't fit in with the living. You can't have a relationship with the living and an animated character. And while someone is still emotionally attached to the character, still bonded to it, they will survive its existence at the cost of anything of the living, right? They will destroy the cow. They'll destroy anything to protect the lie. This is the curse being processed. This is how the curse works, right? So that is self-obsession too. But you got to get into the dynamics of the occults as to how this ritual is played out in our lives, in those fake personalities, those fake personas, the ego, under the emotion, right?
Yeah, that was my next one. They don't see the big picture. People that are self-absorbed, they don't see the big picture as other people see it. They don't see the whole of life. They think that the world is just about them. That's the problem. And there's so many like this. You know, we have to move out of that default state and see the big picture, the whole of life, and reconnect to it also.
Exactly. I mean, you know, factory planet Earth starts from the womb, you know, on the conveyor belt. And we're adults. And nothing stops. And everything's processed. And who we think we are is there. And manufactured with a name. Labeled. And we walk around as a package.
Yeah.
And somehow we fight for its existence. We call it a Greek. Or Canadian, you know, or Australian. And we call it, you know, punk rocker or Rastafarian, and we give it all kinds of titles and standings and that. But we fight for this lie, because who we are is there. What we believe who we are is there.
Who we think we are. Yeah.
Yeah, but we don't see that as anything but we think that is reality. Now, unless you can be vigilant and discerning and scrutinize every thought in your head, alphabet thought, and see it for what it really is, you cannot begin to even disconnect from the attachment you have to this fake persona.
Exactly.
Let me finish.
Yeah.
All while we continue being attached to that fake persona, the entertainment, as Fiona called it, the leisure, and what was the other word besides leisure?
Pleasure.
And pleasure. All the things we do in the system feed, energizes the fake persona, because we keep raising it up. Where our true sentiments is to deflate it, cause it to fade away and be no more. So it's not present anymore. The pretense of it is not present to us anymore, but the man is still standing. Who we really are is still here, right? So we find many ways to keep feeding the lie of this Donald Duck that we run around with, and we call it our driver's license and birth certificate and our bank account and check account, and it comes in the mail with that name in so many possible ways. And we will live for that for the whole of our lives. And even if we think we've withdrawn from all of that, we still do it through the thoughts in our head that we're emotionally attached to, that defines us in eco community, or defines us in permaculture, or defines us in alternative, or the Venus Project. It defines us in so many other ways, where we're still stuck feeding the grid of this matrix lie, which keeps pulling the living man, because little Mary, time to go to bed. No, I want to keep playing. Mum says time to go to bed, and she wants to drag little Mary to bed. Little Mary's still holding on to Alice in Wonderland and dragging Alice with little Mary to bed. People in the system want to drag the fantasy of their Wonderland with them into everything they do. And if we cannot sever that and disconnect from that, we will destroy and undermine everything of our heart.
We were talking about how when someone say they're coming here to stay because they think they, love the dream of kingdom and what we're trying to do, what they actually should be doing most of the times is it should be a whole production coming down the street. Trucks, catering, lights, props, and they bring it all in. Come on. Okay, now we got to set up the lighting. Now, and they start handing out the scripts. Arthur, this is your script. You're going to be the mean bastard. Fiona, this is your script. You're going to be the nicer. So-and-so, this is your script. Can you all please start performing your scripts now so I can start performing my script, because I have it all scripted out. I know what I've come with all these definitions defining me. I've come with all these preconceptions of how it's going to be and what I'm going to do. So if you just don't mind a moment, we'll set up the scenery, we'll bring out the props, the catering crew are ready to serve us. Right, now let's all start acting.
Who's the director?
Well, everyone wants to be the director in their own story. I mean, that's the thing. Everyone thinks they should be directing their own life. They are too. But literally that is what it's like sometimes, because we just insist on bringing all our definitions with us and trying to put them onto whoever and whatever situation we are in. We're bringing the whole film crew with us to set up the scene, and then we are justified when we go, hey, it didn't work out. He turned out to be like this. She turned out to be like that. So-and-so was like this. And I have all the justifications not to look in the mirror and to turn around and walk away with all my justifications, because those people would not act in my script. they would not fulfill what I was supposed to do.
self-fulfilling. See,
Yeah.
we actually do the same thing on our own with diet. We dye it, you know, and we do it with the way we live with people. We do it in just every facet of our life. That what Fiona's pointing out is the pantomime of the marionette. We walk around as a control freak because we worship the definitions that forms Donald Duck and everything about Donald Duck. In this case, it's Arthur Cristian in the system as the Greek boy who grew up in Australia as an Australian citizen with a tax file number, with all that education, all that definition that was mapped out, where I was told I'm a Leo, you know, and I've got a, you know, moon in Cancer, Pisces rising, and just goes all this bullshit, right? If we get sucked into this, what Fia's talking about, if we get stuck into the act, all the energy that everyone fed it since it was started, no matter how many generations going back, the astrotheology of Santo Bernardi will work and be powerful because we energized the pantomime. We fed the grid of that mapping out. And it's like an implant of synthetic DNA passed down through the recorded alphabets, passed down through the children into their blood, through the parents, right? It's the same with the Bible, the buy into, the buy bullshit, right? Because it is all in third party. The good heart of every man is there. The love of me, you see, occultists make the assumption that somehow without Jesus, that love is not there in your life. The presumption that we don't have enough love, that we don't have enough truth, that we don't have enough power and responsibility is what's used to manipulate you into accepting something to fill the void of that you gave up through the belief that you're not good enough. So that film crew that Fiona's talking about is a man or woman filled with that doubt about them not capable. So they have to practice the control freak mechanism that fills all that space where I am capable of being the right worker, being the right lover, being the right friend, but all under this control freak mechanism, right? And when that's threatened, when that is threatened, everything falls apart for them. Again, it's that little child being dragged to bed with holding on to Alice in Wonderland. You know, they're holding on to their teddy bear. They're going to drag it with them to bed. Time to go to sleep now. And they just will not let it go. So what I'm pointing out here is that we have formed such a lie that we don't know who else we are. We don't know how to be anymore because we've been practicing it since the womb. And it's been reinforced and validated by our parents who are practicing it. And no one else could detect this nonsense and inspire us to break away. Right? So in spite of all the mothers who love us and the fathers who work hard because they love us, this love is fake in that way because it was compromised. Right? The true heart is not fake, but the association they have with the mapping out that formed their life in the system, the matrix, where they have to go to work and pay taxes, where they have to buy the food from the shops, where they have to support all the destruction of the middle classes because they helped to build the middle classes, where the middle classes were the workers that became the butchers and the electrical shops and the plumbing shops and the fruit shops. And all these are now been taken over by Bunnings. And there's now, you know, there's very few middle class anymore because it's all these super one monotheism infrastructures of absorbing everything. Hence, like, again, English, the one new world language, the one world language. So we've got to step back to see the bigger picture, but you can only sense that. And to sense that, to expand the bigger picture, you've got to be able to sense what you're sensing and not allow the thoughts of the definitions hijack what you're sensing. Because if you do, you're accepting the definitions, the explanations of what you're sensing to be the truth.
Yeah.
So that what you see comes with the definition, you will be that murderer, justifying the murder.
Which is why, again, it's people often say this, you know, the woman who thinks every man is a bastard will only ever find a bastard to have a relationship with. But she doesn't realize she's creating that bastard, because that's what she's projecting and that's what she's looking out for. And as they go through the relationship, she's looking for all the signals to show her that, yes, indeed, he is a bastard. So when she finally leaves him, she can say, he was a bastard.
Exactly. That's,
you know, but she's not looking at what she is doing to create. It's like we had something recently, someone asked an opinion of Arthur about something, but then she didn't like what Arthur was actually talking about and saying. So she tried to control freak the thing and say, no, well, don't worry, I don't want to talk about it. We don't have it. It's like, no, sorry, you invite someone to offer their opinion, you listen to their opinion. You don't have to like it or agree with it, but don't try and put them in a box, because they're not saying what you want them to say. They're not expressing what you wanted to hear.
That's exactly how people who are attached to the Bible, those who are attached to the Torah and the Talmud, those who are attached to the Bhagavad Gitas, those who are attached to Buddhism, right? Those who are attached to the Muslim religion, the New Age. It just look, it's the same self-fulfilling scenario, because it comes with doubt and uncertainty. The Bible, the presumption that we need to be saved, that we're born in original sin, allows the occults to practice the pantomime of all those who are trapped underneath this lie, because they are under the lie, in the ritual of being saved by the church, by their Holy Communion with the priest, by their faith in Jesus and God, when they don't realize that already they are gifted with the legacy of everything of the Creator. But it was dormant, it was put to sleep, because your parents put you to sleep, and you allowed them because you trusted them to put you to sleep, and you weren't strong enough to withstand the peer pressure and the occultic rituals. Again, Darkness Visible Part 5, that link, you'll find in some of the other videos in the About section. And I do stress the point, read the About section of all these videos we put up on YouTube, that Johnny puts up, that we put up. There's links to so many other things you can read that go into these themes to help you build this bigger picture, right? Because if you don't know who you are, you will have the doubt and the uncertainty that brings you into a ritual, to be trapped in the system of the church, or the system of the synagogue, or the system of the temple, or the system of the Colosseum, or the system of the New Age auditorium, or sport, or fashion, rock and roll, right?
Yeah.
Because it's the doubt and the uncertainty and the manipulation of that cons us into performing the Donald Duck, because we somehow think that the fantasy will fill the emptiness of what we gave up. You see, when you have a bigger dream, you're filling it with your loving soul. There's nothing empty there. There's no yearning. You don't need anyone. In fact, you have dead silence in that way, because you've got nothing to prove, right? There's nothing to say, because you already are everything and more. You're living it and being its present. Its presence of life is life itself. It's a living soul, right? So the occults have to deceive us into selling out that. And that's what these videos are about, the self-obsession and the mapping out, because it's the definition that tricks you, right? So this is not attacking the man who's a Christian, or the man who's a Muslim, or the man who's a Buddhist. We're just pointing out how the dynamics of the system works, that is social engineering performed on you from so young, or other methods of social engineering that got you familiarized and got you so used to it in so many different ways that you accept another version of social engineering. Because you can go from punk rocker to heavy rock to heavy metal, or backwards. You can go from Christianity, or a different split of Christianity, even to being atheist, or from atheism to Christianity. The form of acclimatizing with social engineering and being bonded to the pantomime of fantasy, where the character we perform as Donald Duck in atheism, in Christianity, in Judaism, it's one and the same shit. We're all doing it. right? And we do it right now with the money I have, my money in the bank, my house, my land title deeds. What land title deed? All you've got is the fucking system who are protecting your lie. And that's anyone who owns anything in the system is a liar, a fucking liar. We're all liars. If you own something, you need the system to claim what you believe that you own. So you need your Donald Duck there with everybody else to be the Donald Duck, so you can run around as Mr. Scrooge and all the other bullshit that comes with it. So you can walk and say, I've got my land.
Or I own my house. I own my house. And that's why the house behind my place has been sold 5 times in 6 years.
And when people say that, they're saying to everyone, fuck you. I'm only thinking about me. Fuck you. That's what they really say. Now, it's hard to take people to this place, but this is how sick it gets. So while people are wanting to own, they need the system to protect what they claim they own, and they need the force behind it because if something threatens to take it from them, right? They need that force. So they need the whole world of the occultists to be there, present in their lives as the authorities, because most people do not want to be politicians. Most people do not want to be big business people. Most people just want to be simple, everyday people, bogged down doing everyday lives because they don't want those bigger responsibilities. They don't have that kind of confidence. And usually you have to be in the inside and be protected by the Masons themselves for those to have that kind of exclusivity, privilege, power, authority, title, standings, right? So, you know, another point to this, because it just comes into many styles. Everyone in the system is discriminated from the womb because very few have the ability to grasp mathematics and be able to apply mathematics economically and be a businessman that works with the economics of law. Now, more than 90% of the population of man have already been discriminated against before they've even arrived in the womb. And they will never, ever make it in the economics of the system because they don't have the nous for it and never will, no matter how much they try. But even worse than that, the discrimination goes against the sentiments of their heart because most people don't like taking advantage of other brothers and sisters. So they shy away from that kind of manipulation, blatant manipulation, where they're using other people. So that leaves a small proportion of the population, a melting pot of hell, who fight amongst themselves, and those who get all the icing on top, the Freemasons, the very few who get it all, right? And that is applied in the system. So this is why you won't find most of us being politicians. You won't find most of us being lawyers and barristers and all that kind of stuff, right? You won't find brothers and sisters doing most of the things that they look up to, where the authority is coming from, that rains down as the Pope.
You won't find most of them being rich.
Or being rich, yeah, and having all the privileges of being rich, right? The opposite happens because the discrimination and the censorship that comes with that is so present, so prevalent, and it compromises, look, just about everybody, right? I can speak from experience about this stuff because I have the ability to be a millionaire, to be very wealthy. I have those skills, and it was there, not as a very wealthy man. And in my networks, all my families, then most of them are very wealthy. Now, the point is, I hate all this. I didn't know what it was. But in hindsight, after this 11 years of this work, and us, what we're doing, building the bigger picture of our living soul and letting go of all these definitions, you get to see the bigger picture, how this thing really works. So anyway, the long story of this brought down, unless we know who we really are, which cannot be defined by anyone, and it cannot be defined by system thought, we're living a lie. And that lie will be land titles deeds. will be ownership over property, whatever you want to call it. It'll be ownership over race, culture, creeds. It'll be ownership over all kinds of privileges and exclusivity by association with words, because it is words. Words are definitions, right? If you know who you really are, we have no ownership. We don't claim anything, right? Now, I get it, and Fee gets it. We get it. We're all waking up being compromised. That doesn't mean we should play the violin, you know, and say, oh, poor me, what are we going to do? And we diminish our power, meaning we become weaker in resistance to stop this and turn this thing around. We have to be strong, stronger than we think we are. But unless you can hold the bigger picture, so that as we force this thing to collapse and all ownership is gone, which is what has to happen amongst us, and raise up the living paradise out of all of us working and using the skills of the system. Now, we wrote about this like 11 years ago when we were writing about the kingdom thing. How can you define the value of a woman who's 80 years old, has got one hand and one leg, but has 50 years of profound experience with children being brought up naturally and skills working with nature and all that stuff? What commercial value do you place on that woman? And should that woman be discriminated against another man who's sitting on $2 million, who's just got that but doesn't have all the other skills that that woman's got, right? And so if you look at the dynamics of this, and we can break away from what's in it for me, break away from the exclusivity and privilege that comes with the standings of what we claim that we have, requiring the slave system to uphold that lie. If we can work together and use the lie to set the foundations of the living truth to rise up while the lie collapses amongst us, we can rebuild these kingdoms and these food forests, and the self-obsession is falling away because we are each holding the bigger dream and not letting the doubt and the uncertainty and the distrust and the fear to come amongst us.
And because we realize that everything we need is actually there. And the more we are content, because we remember who we are, the more we're content with the simple things, the less we need everything of the system, and the less the system can be rolling along fueled by energy, because we want its entertainment, we want its pleasure, we want its leisure. And we'll deal with all the work, the taxes, the laws, etc., because of the leisure, the pleasure, and the materialism that we get, that is filling up our vacuum because we don't know who we are. So the more we remember who we are, the more we're happy with a simpler life. And we realize we don't actually need very much. As long as we've got food, water, shelter, and, you know, people, animals around us, we're fine.
True. Look, there's two ways. There's two ways this will play out.
I'm hit by a mega storm at the moment, so I hope we're not going to lose power. This is what I put in the chat everywhere. So if you see us disappear, it's because I'm losing power.
You weren't kidnapped by the occultists?
Or the aliens?
No, not kidnapped yet.
Beamed up by Scotty? Okay.
No.
But anyway, there's two ways this could play out. There may be more. One way is that some will just go into isolation in the wilderness and let it ride out until everything crashes, and because it will all go. It will truly wipe out. Now, do we let it go that far and we'll let this wipeout happen as a fever? Right? Now, if you put distortion in your body, the lie, if you eat the lie that is processed food, processed grains, processed, wheat and rice, anything that's processed liquids, anything that doesn't come straight from nature as it is in its pure original form, if you eat that, smell that, you're setting into motion the information of the lie. And that lie is the social engineering of the lie. It becomes us. And so that's the disease. That's the sickness. That's the mental diseases we end up with, and the physical sicknesses we end up with. So if we do not want a fever, because see what happens, one part of us, the sentiments of our heart, is we want to live. We want to live, and we dream to live. And the body feels that, because we're telling the body, oh, you still want to live, but you keep opening your mouth and you keep putting shit in it, and you keep drinking shit, and you keep putting crap in it, and all these unnatural things. What do you want me to do? Because if you want to live, I can't keep it together because you're just packing in so much shit day after day. I don't have the energy to keep getting it out of your body. So I'm going to end up having to store it in your body, in your tissues, in your bones, in your cells. I'm going to have to put it in the nervous system. I'm going to put it everywhere. And I'm going to end up running out of space to store it while I keep trying to survive your life because you want to live. So the immune system says, right, I've got to have a fever. So your body has a fever because you still want to live. And you get really sick. Right? And out comes the vomit, right? Tidal waves. Out comes the diarrhea and the farting. That's your earthquakes and the lava. Out comes the shaking of the, that's your, all that shaking, all that fever of your body, you know, and all that sweating is all that rain. So if we do not take the full responsibility through the big picture, the big dream, and absorb it and transmute it ourselves, through that true love, that unconditional love, not the idea of it, actually being it and process it. Like cleaning a house that no one's cleaned. We clean it. Or it remains a mess, right? In this case, the body's a mess. And if we still want to live, the body will do what it can while it's aging and deteriorating. We'll have that fever. And in this case, collectively, while we still want the system, we still want to have ownership of the land. We still want to have fighting over our race, culture, creeds, title, standings with borders and passports and all this lying. We will create a fever because the living consciousness of man that dreams for freedom, that dreams for love, that dreams for peace, that is the sun that shines, the life of man's heart, it will bring on a fever because the living power of our dream is greater than the lie. And the devastation of this will create such a fever that very few of us will remain. There will only be a few of us left because we dream it that way. Now that's one road we can take. The other road we can take, we take the responsibility, we build these kingdoms, we throw everything we've got into it, we have no emotional attachments to it anymore, and we surrender everything to the greater good of a tribe with the tribal leaders, elders, like us. We're not the only ones, but we can handle that responsibility, and we will. And we fix it and set the example so it can be copied, but not under sameness of oneness, right? So that the naturalness of every innocent child can raise up in nature their living soul, and every brother and sister is learning to withdraw from this nonsense, hence these videos, right? So we're not recreating the system. We're undoing it through our willingness to handle that responsibility. Now, that's another way we can diminish the effect of this fever.
And but some people will say that becoming leading others and we're not imposing anything. That's the difference. Leaders of the world today are imposing their stuff, and that's
exactly.
Very self-obsession.
Exactly, but we're talking about building a bridge.
That's
from
it.
The back to sense, and then the whole bridge has to be destroyed too.
Because there's gotta be some leaders, some people taking the lead at one point and showing the way.
Taking full responsibility and having people to trust, unconditionally. But you got to use your sense to make sense of those brothers and sisters. You cannot fall into the lie, oh, I need to be saved. Because those people, we would not even let them cross the bridge. We'll burn them off.
Because the goal is obviously that everyone is free from being under anybody. But because we're so used to being slaves, that's actually something we have to learn how to do. We are so used to looking to others to tell us where to go, what to do, how to act, everything, that we actually have to actively learn how to become free. We don't practice freedom in the system. So from birth, we're practicing slavery. We're not practicing freedom. So the point about leaders is not about following. It's just about people who are prepared to take on that full responsibility to stop thinking about the self-obsession and work out what do we have to do to further this dream right here and now, even if it's unpopular, even if it's hard work, even if this, that, and the other, it doesn't appease the egos. This is what has to be done. Exactly. But as Arthur said, once we've built that bridge and we're over the other side, then no one's anyone's leader. There's nothing, because everyone has already taken that full responsibility for their life.
Exactly.
And they don't need anybody telling them what to think and do. They don't need anyone
Exactly.
saying, hey, we really need to do this project now because of such and such and such.
We just need an agreement on a direction that leads everyone to become free from being underneath each other forevermore. Right? In this life.
Because what we
we've got to work together to dismantle the system, which means dismantling each of us from the self-obsession, which is why we call the mudroom in the Kingdom Dream. Anyone who reads the Steps of Kingdom, which you'll see the links in some of these about videos, you read it. This is going back 10 years plus now when we were writing all this stuff. So that needs to be revisited and updated at some point. But we need a common consensus amongst many of us to agree on a direction and allow those to work together with those who are going to lead it to cross that bridge with the intention to set everyone free. So this is not Moses and the Israelites leading them out of Egypt. We're talking about destroying all of this shit. But that's the other road we've got, because there's no, to us, I can't see any other way around this. And I don't know if we've looked at all this. It can only go one of two ways. Either we don't give enough fuck, we don't care, because we're too scared, and we'll allow this thing to happen because those of us who hold this dream of the bigger picture, that still is the sun that shines, because that's where the sunshine is coming from, the living dream, the living soul. Those of us.
That's why they call it solar energy. It's soul.
Exactly. And we are the only one present to that, directly experiencing it.
Yeah.
So the thing is, and I'm talking about the dream of life here. If we do not want to take on that kind of responsibility, because it's full responsibility, then all of us who hold that solar dream, that hold that living dream, we are the ones responsible for the fever. Because we're holding the dream of life to continue. We're not going to let it go. So everything that's not of it anymore, all the splinters that offshoot out of it will all go. Because they can all have it. Because they'll no longer be part of the living dream. They can have the lie and go with it and be buried in it. And we'll use it as compost to re-sprout everything out of it. Now that's before us. Any moment now, whether it's weeks, months, or the next year or so, it's that close now. Do we go down that road? And you can kiss goodbye, because there will be a fever. It'll come with us, and it's lethal. It really will happen. It's happening already now. And you're going to watch people dropping off all over the place, because nothing will be left but the living dream. And all that impurity will not be here anymore. It's gone. Because when some of us take that responsibility on of that bigger picture, we end it because we say so. And that's using free will, because we're not invalidating everyone's free will who doesn't want it, because we're saying you can have it. Use your free will and go that way. Have an eternal death. Experience it forevermore. It's all yours. Bon voyage.
You know, another point that I want to maybe finish on, it's to someone that is very self-absorbed will be very selfish. And I think at one point in our we must look ourselves into our own eyes and say we have to do something for humanity, for others, without expecting anything in returns. But the way we've been conditioned, it's always instant gratification to everything we do. So we get caught up and we don't participate, contribute to the dream of life, because we're contributing to the dream of hell. That's what we're building unconsciously, the dream of hell, and we get very caught up in it. So yes, selfishness has to go for sure. We have to contribute and connect.
The self-obsession is always what destroys our dreams. Because Arthur was saying, you know, we agree on a direction. Now, we've had many people we've agreed on a direction with, but along comes the self-obsession, and that is what destroys the direction everyone has agreed upon. Because the self-obsession starts finding everything wrong for the self about that one direction. If it involves a certain amount of selflessness, giving up, letting go, whether it's of material goods or pleasures, or whatever. So it doesn't take long to come up with, oh, but I don't feel like working hard today. I want to rest, or I want to go out to the beach, or I don't want someone telling me what to do. even if they just have more experience in that area.
There's a lot
exactly.
of the distrust, the uncertainty comes up. And so that pantomime that was played out many times up until they came here gets to be replayed again, right? And so
that's the script they gave out.
That's the script they gave out. And so they will reperform what their father did to them or mother did to them or what their lovers, partners did to them in broken marriages. You know, it's amazing how we replay, recreate it. With us, we rat all this out. We start attacking. We really do. We attack the phenomena of a self-obsession that people bring with them, because if we don't help them to unhook from it, and they can't build the confidence to know they're in a safe place with us while we're helping them with it, they're not going to be able to cross that bridge with us either, because we do it to each other all the time. And we're not saying that we have worked it all out. We haven't. But we are sincere enough to know when our shit is there, we catch ourselves in it. And that's enough. But we got to make sure we don't cling to that shit to feed it. Because if we do, we'll still want to hold on to the house. We still want to hold on to the land titles deeds. We still want to hold on to the bank accounts and the credit cards. We still want to hold on to things about me and I and self and all that, because it operates in the system. It doesn't operate in the living dream of where the true sentiments of our heart is, because no one owns anything there. And all that's a lie, because you know, everyone knows when you see the nonsense what it is. Why would you want to perpetuate it? So the conviction, not the con, but the determination, the inspiration, the passion to truly let go of this lie in this life means you've got to have your real brothers and sisters on your radar. Those who are truly sincere about this, they must always be on your radar so you are sensing them. Because if you don't, your shit will come up in that script and you will start performing them on your radar as if they are on your radar.
And they will start wrecking your ship.
And as we pointed out last week or the week before, if we all have to do this for each other, because if one of us doesn't have freedom, none of us have freedom. So this is where we really have to start working for our brothers and sisters rather than working for us, because it's in making sure that our brothers and sisters are taken care of that we get taken care of.
That's why
it's
we come with baseball bats.
Making sure they have freedom that we get the freedom too. Making sure they have enough to eat means we have enough to eat. So we have to change from the whole system bias of I've got to make sure I've got enough to eat. I've got to make sure I've got somewhere to live. I've got to make sure I've got what we think is freedom in the system, which is usually financial, comfort.
Well, defaults to it.
Yeah. But we have to change all that and start working for all those around us, because if we're taking care of everybody and everybody else is taking care of everybody, everybody's taken care of. There's no one left out. And everyone's got their freedom.
Yeah, see, the other thing is that a lot of people will hear these sort of videos and they'll have their own belief system come up and say, no, God has created another paradise, or should be right. It'll all work itself out. And usually what we say to people, will bring forward this, whatever it is you claim in first party. Let's hear it directly from that and not from you acting out the belief system, right? If you listen carefully in what we're saying, we are responsible, Fiona are responsible for the fever. We are truly the redeemers of man now. But any man who's woken up is already that redeemer too. We hold, because we are beyond the time and space of location now and all that. If you do not want to be part of that living dream amongst brothers and sisters who want to hold it, you really want to live the lie, then there is that separation of the ways. You will experience it and you will pull away from us or others who take on that responsibility. Right? Because there's no ego in what we're on about. There really is no ego. It is because we have this determination to come with a baseball bat and hammer someone's egregore and smash it to help them to come to see it. Then they won't sense the intentions. They'll think that we're harming them and injuring them. And if they get lost in that, then they lived the lie in the first instance before they came here. They actually came here for us to rescue them within their egregore. They came here to us to feed the egregore, to serve their egregore and not the sentiments of their true heart, right? Because if they come with their true heart, they will surrender the lie and go where the truth takes them, which is where we're going. And they won't see us as someone of an authority figure or a leader in that way, because we're not. what they'll sense is the passion to confront, just like your immune system. You want a strong immune system to say no to the lie. And in this case, with this man and this woman, we show the bigger picture often. So people can sense the intention behind why we do what we do. When we come with a baseball bat, when we come with soothing words, and we come with scrutiny and things like that. Because if we don't, we are lost. We truly lost.
You know, it's like,
and confusion
we
reigns.
Talk about how, you know, the system is the mirror of real life. In real life, we are all, I'm going to use the word entitled, I don't really like it, but basically everything is provided. We should have no problem finding food, water, shelter. Now that is mirrored in the system by our need, I've got to get this, it becomes a grasping consumerism and materialism, because we sense that we actually have this right to walk out and everything we need is provided, because that's the dream that was created. But it turns around into this selfishness of, I've got to have it, I need it, I need it.
Coles and Woolworths.
Exactly.
And this is how it plays out, and we default to that. So
because we're sensing that thing that everything should be provided, so somehow we think everything should be provided, and that is what makes us really selfish. And that especially more and more the younger generation, they want to go to work and make great wages and do nothing, which is what you were saying before.
And they got the platform of the system to default to do that. You see, if you don't have the system, they can't do that either.
And now with technology, the young people, a lot of them, you know, they can't move out unless they've got the TV, their iPads, their iPods, or everything, you know, technology, and they need first-class living, you know, before they can even move.
Yeah, most people are so disconnected. You know, we live in an era where we're more connected than ever. Look, Australia, Canada, tonight, live and direct on YouTube. This is huge. We have the potential to shift overnight the vibration here.
We use system.
We're so addicted to the evil stuff that most of us are lost in fantasy with devices and the nonsense of Babylon, because we cannot sense life. We cannot sense life anymore.
Exactly. It comes with the intention. Look at the system like a dark cave. All the technology, all the industrial engineering, all the printing press, and everything all the information highways that forms the matrix of the system, right? Every facet of ABC 1, 2, 3 played out. That is a dark cave, like Plato's cave. And it is truly jet black in there. There is no light, no soul. And then you get some of us who have that sentiment, prepared to break past, bring a torch of light inside to light up the dark cave. So we go onto the internet, we communicate through websites, we communicate through whatever means to bring this light, because at the moment, it's a light that no one can sense, right? People are so in the darkness. They're the drones in Star Trek. If you watch Star Trek and the drones, right? The Borg, they're truly Borg. They don't know what the light is, the light of the soul. So you bring the light to try and let's note it. You see it, just to get them. And if you can get them to just notice it, they may start to draw their consciousness to that light and start thinking. And that may lead them to start to see the light expanding inside this dark cave. So people say, but you're using the internet. What a hypocrite. You're using English. What a hypocrite. They don't get the intention why we're doing it. When we woke up, we had a choice. Truly, we did. We had a choice. Do we go in the wilderness and just walk away, take what kids we had then and start a life out in nowhere and just walk away? Or do we stay in the system and reach out to our brothers and sisters? Now, we got to see, well, what's the point of going to the wilderness? The occultists will just track us down like they came and find us and kill us anyway if they're that psychotic. They'll just track everyone down. So we realized we needed to confront the system and bring it down from inside. So we've gone back into the system with this bigger picture that we sensed. And we've learned how to communicate the insights. So now we can deliver in these videos we've been having with you since August of last year. What is it now? We've got 8 videos now. This is the 8th one we've done with you to share these insights that we have practiced like chipping away at the coalface. We've been working away as tradespeople. How do you communicate these insights? How do you find idiot-friendly ways? And we worked out using linear analogies, metaphors, ways of describing pictures. We provide pictures to paint insights. And you'll find many brothers and sisters over the 11 years who have just going whacking up, just like happened to us. We woke up. And so that's what this is about, right? So don't be attached with us being attached to social media and the internet.
We'd really rather turn it all off and throw it all in the bin.
Which we are going to do. We are going to disconnect.
At some stage.
It's in a sooner stage.
And it's also the fact that when you go off into the wilderness, you're just walking away from all the mess you've left. And we see that very common now. People, they grow up in the system, they start to recognize it for what it is, but they've spent 20, 30 years contributing to the mess, and then they go and find a lovely, pristine bit of land to go and live on, but they invariably take some of the mess with them. Whereas it's like, well, shouldn't you actually just clean up some of the mess first before, and we turn back the damaged lands into, we leave the pristine lands alone. For goodness sake, let's not touch them, leave them to be pristine, leave them to the animals who don't harm them. And we take back the agricultural land, the land that's had been full of animal husbandry, and we turn those back into pristine land, which will take 5-10 years. You know, it'll take no time at all.
Might take
really.
long. 5, we get 2-3 animals.
And then when we all do that, there's no fighting over the pristine lands because everywhere is pristine. We've created that beauty and peace and joy everywhere we go. So everyone's got a spot that's beautiful.
And this again is the steps of kingdom. Some of us stay in the system, while others are pulled out of the system. But those of us who are pulled out of the system, we're working all day, every day, building the infrastructure of a kingdom. So others are using the system to directing cash flow to the kingdom. So we're using the system to access materials and things without going into a battle and creating more wars just by becoming Robin Hood. It's going and stealing and doing things. We do it out in the open. So basically, we use Caesar's laws. We don't break Caesar's laws. We work with the Freemasons, right? And use our willpower to show them we don't have a broken will and that they don't have anything to stop us from what we're doing, right? So we're not going to break your laws because we haven't got time to deal with that shit anyway. We've got a bigger picture to deal with, the more important thing. And we're going to use everything of your world, all your cultures, who you think you've got, and build this paradise that is this bridge that we're going to create to walk across is the land that we're standing on, that we're living on, as that living kingdom, right? And this is how we do it. So some of us, and as we build the kingdom dream up, when the food forests are growing and the infrastructure is growing, we call it the mudroom, then more can leave the system to join it. But the purpose is to bring everyone who is supporting it into it. So everyone can drop out. So we have to learn to disconnect everything. So we don't need the system whatsoever anymore. And from that, from this 3, 4, 5, 6 acre mudroom, the community center, where we rebuilt a new tribe, a true tribe of this way of life, kingdom way of life, we then go out into the wider areas of the land and to support them building their kingdom domains. They're what Hannah Cecilia talks about, this hectare of land if they want to, and they can, and we do it without doing harm. And they learn to live without electricity, without solar energy, without wind power. But they've got a whole tribe of community and brothers and sisters with their children, right? And we don't have schools anymore the way we do it. We have other form where all the kids come together and they work with each other and to undo it and allow them to open up their consciousness, right? In ways where they're not being defined by the doubt and uncertainty and inside these prison stereotype systems, which is what we're all been struggling with most of our lives.
Yeah.
So that's what we're doing, and we're not claiming exclusivity and privilege. We're just saying this is a clear direction. It's simple. But are you prepared to let go of the emotion and all the shit that comes with it to make it happen? Because
what you find with nearly everyone out there promoting what's going wrong with the system, very few people can actually offer you some sort of remedy, how we get out of it. And in fact, that's how we often deal with people who write and criticize and complain. We say, well, where's your remedy? If you've got something, we're more than happy to look at it. If you come up with something better than what we have, we'll go with it. We're not attached to it has to be this way. If there's something better, we'll go with it. But really, we've looked and looked, and frankly, there isn't.
Well,
at the
can we
moment.
just
There's
quickly
nothing
just quickly say this, is that we have challenged these type of people multiple hundreds of times since these kind of attacks towards us, writing us off, right? We turn around and ask, okay, what's the remedy that you have that provides freedom, truth, peace, joy, abundance, do no harm for all of life, no slaves and no rulers? This is what everybody wants, this in their heart. No one will go against this. When you confront them, do you not want all this? They will admit it. Okay, show us the remedy you have, the walk, the talk that does that in this life. What have you got? They have nothing, but we've got it, and we're pushing it since 2005, 2006. We've been pushing it. Right, the steps of kingdom. Look for it. You'll see it in the about section. Remember, there's no G in it. Kingdom. Remember, this was written back years ago. Our headspace has changed a lot over the years. We'll probably revisit and rewrite it. You know, you can look. There are so many. Look, to recreate a kingdom, we need actors, directors, producers, filmmakers. We need stage, props to build it. The bridge. All of us working together for the bigger picture to destroy it all in this life. So all that's left is us on the land, free of all this stuff, and no longer making anyone a slave for us to run the routines of our self-obsession, because you need the system to have self-obsession be performed. But if there is no system and someone still has self-obsession, there is no light for the moth to be drawn to. So they either disappear or they give it up. All right? Yeah. They walk.
You know, when we have to do everything ourselves, I think life does become simpler. I was just thinking then of communities where they help build each other's houses. Now, if you're building your own houses, you quickly decide, hey, look, I only really need a couple of rooms. You're not going, hey, I need a 5-bedroom house plus a movie theater plus a gym plus this, because building all those extra rooms is actually pretty hard work, you know, and you suddenly realize, actually, I can be quite content with a space to sleep in and a space to live in. I actually don't need any more. Okay, you've got a family, you need a bit more space for sleeping, whatever, but you realize that you actually don't need all of that stuff, because to build it is huge.
Well, you're not staying up at night with electricity and light bulbs and candles and all that stuff, you know, because you go to bed as it goes dark and you wake up early in the morning when it's still a little bit dark and twilight's going to start kicking in, and you spend most of your life outside.
Exactly.
And when this is what people don't get. As we change by holding the bigger picture, the weather has changed too. All the weather changes. Everything changes. And the whole of life all around us has changed, because we are that change, changing, fixing it all again. Yeah. And that's the responsibility we each bring to the table, right? So when people look at us, don't look at us as followers and leaders. Look at us as inspiration. When your brothers and sisters come into our lives, we look at that. We don't look for leaders and followers in that way, right? Because in kingdom, there are no slaves, there's no rulers, there's no masters all to be ruled. That doesn't go on.
No,
and that's really
no place for that. Only place for good vibrations. Hey, thank you again, Arthur and Fiona. We're gonna close this one there. Do you have something to add? We're gonna come back again this next week. It's not the end of it. We always have something to for our brothers and sisters to elevate. That's what we want. I want to elevate my state of awareness, expand my awareness of who I am. I don't want to hide who I am, because that's another trait of being self-absorbed. If you hide who you are self-absorbed. So don't hide who you are. Bring it out. Rise and shine, little by little, day by day, until you find the keys to the heart of gold. But do you have something to add? Yeah, that was my question.
John, here's a suggestion that from next week, if we do these shows, we now get away from all the mapping out that forms these kind of conversations that we've been sharing, because all we're doing is bringing light to the mapping out to show the life of what it is, right? That from here on, we should start focusing on what are we doing about breaking away from this in this life. Now, we use the word kingdom, we can call it other things too. And we should start inviting more brothers and sisters who are committed to this to come and share.
And inspire people to take action. This is what we want them. more
Yeah,
action, more.
So we can start, maybe when we make these kind of chats, we'll probably drop some of our video. Like last week's show, we put more pictures in and added it to what we did with you. So you'll see the video we put up was a lot longer than yours. So these next ones, we might do a bit shorter, and we start putting more videos in, adding to what we talk about, the gardens and the projects, and we start getting more people into these conversations. That forms the social network of those who are really committed to this, right?
Exactly.
Now, we all know that the occultists of Big Brother were listening to everything. When you wake up, it doesn't matter what they're listening to. We don't have to hide anything anymore about anything. When we're truly free of this stuff, our light is shining without no curtains to shut the light. There's no blinds because we've got no doubt anymore, right? We just keep living the dream we live, and do it out in the open on social media, through the CIA networks, through whatever interference they wanted, through whatever censorship they choose to continue. It's not our problem. It's their problem. And if they want, let them have it. They can let them have it and let them go with that.
We will keep on going, and nothing will confuse our mind, that's for sure. Nothing can confuse my mind anymore because I'm using scrutiny. And once you go to that step of using scrutiny in your research, it will not confuse your mind. So if you're still confused, it's okay. And Bruce, embrace your confusion because it is a reflection of your growth also. So don't freak out if you're confused with stuff we're saying today. No? If you're confused with some stuff, it's only you're going to grow from that. We're all going to grow from this.
Here's an insight. We're confusing the dreams we dream with, right? The mind, my mind, is the mapping. Because you can't bring forward the mind in first party, or the intellect, or the person, right? It's not there. So that's, the mind is Alice. And be aware, when we talk this language, become more and more conscious of what we're saying, because the sentiments are there, the intuition we have to sense each other is there. Just be aware that when we're all talking to each other, what are we representing? Because it's so easy to bring the mapping out of the definitions into our relationships. And if we don't route these things out, the mask.
And we do
That's it. We put on the mask.
Confusion can become sure, you might not comprehend things straight away and you need to think and work it out for yourself, but confusion can very well become a justification for doing nothing if we're not careful. We keep being confused and we keep being confused and we keep being confused, and so we end up not taking any action because we can't see clearly the action to take. Yeah,
we're doing nothing with the sentiments, inspirations of our heart that inspires us to live the true path of freedom, right? We give that up because we're still attached to the definitions that forms the fake persona that we live for, where we ignore, even though we're talking about freedom and consciousness, which is all through social media everywhere. We're actually still not actually doing it.
You know, sometimes we have to be prepared to start taking the steps towards our dream, even when we cannot see clearly all the steps to the end result of our dream, to that freedom. We have to be bright. Like if you've got 20 steps, we have to be, when we can only see 1 and 2, we need to actually take 1 and 2, because it's in taking those first steps that suddenly the other steps become a little clearer. And so we have to be brave. And I think that's what we tend to do very, very easily. We go, oh, I want to do this. And then we start instantly talking about all the reasons why we can't do it and why it won't work, and all the problems we can foresee, and we can't see clearly all the way to get it. But that's the wrong way to do about it. We have to have that in our intention and keep living our lives, and then boom, we'll spot an opportunity to come and we take that first step, even though we can't see the other steps. But when we take that first step, we're changing our thinking, we're learning, and another opportunity comes along. So it's very easy to put ourselves off all our dreams because we go to this intellectual, I've got to work it out, talk it through, make it all map out. It doesn't happen like that, because by taking steps 1, 2, and 3, we become the different man or woman from our experiences. That means we can see the steps that come. But if we're still stuck at the beginning, we can't see those steps up there because we haven't taken steps 1, 2, and 3. So that's the courage to follow those inspirations without being able to see clearly everything that will happen.
You got to
And that's why I keep coming back here to take steps after steps and, you know, go through it and face my fears. Also, it's very important to face our fears. Like, don't let them mobilize you, like you said. I don't care who's watching or who's trending us or who's following us. Like, it's about the dream of life. I moved out of the dream of hell, so I don't even think about that stuff anyway. I'm into the dream of life, building something with people with great minds at work, honored to create a shift in our awareness. Our awareness is expanding, no doubt, of who we are, but we got to keep on pushing, and we have to. If we have the strength to do these shows together, we have the responsibility to do it. It's something I feel. It's something I feel, and no, it's like I'm ordained to be great. I have no other choice. I'm ordained to be great here,
You
so
are
I cannot
great.
back up. Yeah.
No word needs to be said.
But also, what you just said, I think, was very poignant, because I think about, we just got to keep pushing, keep pushing. It's very easy to become complacent, to just wake up a little bit and become complacent with that, and then sit there thinking, hey, I'm awake, I'll talk about it, but we don't keep pushing. No, okay, so I got this far, but there's more to go, there's more to go. So yeah, we fall into the self-obsession of our awakening, and that's what we've got to talk about, and
because we keep defaulting to that system where the self-obsession operates. Look, 99.99% of everything coming at us, even through YouTube and video, about us on the land with garden, and when I mean us, we're talking brothers and sisters working on the land, it's all still self-obsession. You'll be surprised when you use scrutiny and you observe your brothers and sisters, you'll find their intention is still about self-obsession. It operates to the default of the system that still provides them. They're not actually tackling the system to collapse it and to build that kind of community that collapses the whole system, to free everyone from it, so no one is under that peer pressure. No one's been compromised by mathematics and economics and all these other things that come into it, right? So because we talk the dream of the land and the food forests and that, you're still going to have to be extremely vigilant, because so many brothers and sisters play out the self-obsession on the land, in permaculture, under the cult of permaculture, in system science, and cult of soil science. And it goes on. And the seduction is so powerful that even we, sometimes we go, oh, we got caught from it. Hang on.
Powerful. Powerful. Haven't seen it for 40 years. 40 years. Powerful. Come on. It's and most people don't see it, Arthur.
We practice the self-obsession by the moment, because we're reflecting, reacting, representing the definition as our fake Donald Duck. And we walk around as Donald Duck. And so the behavior, the personality, the character, all that is built in. This, again, darkness, visible, part 5. These rituals of trauma. So unless we can be strong enough to separate from that emotion and be vigilant and discerning, we will get seduced by all the green and all the New World Order's mantras that will come with it. Right? But I'm not joking. We'll bring this up in other videos. We're talking about. We'll bring in people like David Wolf and watch his mantras. We'll show you how so many of these brothers and sisters who are getting this kind of audience, because they're getting the support by the networks that allows them this audience. You'll see the mantras, and you'll see they do support the system. They do not want it to stop. They don't offer anything to walk away from it with that kind of determination of absoluteness to destroy in this life.
That's what we'll talk about next show, how they keep us under hypnosis and how people are under hypnosis, and that much. And especially guys like David Wolf, you're pointing out, I see him lately on social media, especially Facebook, really putting people under hypnosis with live feeds on the side of the beach. And what, you just look at through a screen to the beach. Why don't you go to the beach? Why don't you? No, they emphasize that the numbness, they want us to stay numb to reality. This is what I sense from that guy, David Wolf. He might be very great talking about flat earth lately or something. People were freaking out about him, and it was going all over. Hey, David Wolf's talking about flat earth and stuff. But okay.
I'll put up a link about this Max Igan, who did this years ago. There's an Australian guy. And with one of his videos, we saw this whole hypnotic thing happening. And we've made an article and we put it up 5 years ago now, or 4 years ago. I'll put that in the about section when we put up our video, and then you can copy it over to yours. And go and have a look at this, and you'll see exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
This is what we are here for, to help you to see through all this stuff. Watch out for these buzzwords, these mantras of the words like echo and alternative and intentional, because they come with the system. They always come with the self-obsession, because that's what the system is. So we'll bring it up. That's good.
Yeah,
So
we'll be back next week, guys, for another one for sure. Same time, same day. We don't know, to me, the days. This week we were Thursday. I thought we were Wednesday. I was all mixed up, so I'm really not in time. But I keep track of where we are with this. And thank you everyone for being here. Hip Up Enforcers Set. Patrick was there the whole time. Also, he followed what you said about the guy before. He was commenting on it. Big up, Patrick. He's always very on point with his comments. I read his comments in the chat. I'm going to send them to you. There's a lots of great comments in the chat tonight that you would be delighted to look at. Arthur.
Paste it into a text file and just send it to us as a text file attachment or a Word document.
That's what I'll do.
It's easy for us. Yeah.
Because we don't want, we're not only self-absorbed by ourselves here, we want to hear what people have to say also. We are opinionated, yeah, but we are interested in the opinion of others very, very much. I've always been very much interested to hear what people have to say. So that's why if you come here and comment in the chat, it can resonate very, very far. So don't hesitate to put your comments to, it's going to get to us. I'm printing everything. Like I said, I don't ignore everything. It's not about me, and I don't care. I'm not, don't think about it's about us. So we're going to keep it that way and keep rising and shining. That's what I say all the time. Rise and shine. And the good thing is we're awake from that dream of hell. So we're moving forward to the dream of life altogether. And that's the greatest time to be alive. So thank you very, very much, Arthur and Fiona, for your time, because we put value on time. I put value on time, money, I don't care. Put $35,000 on the table, do this. It's nothing like the time you give here and the energy, also the life energy you put into this, because you have put a lot. So I'm very, very grateful, and I'm sure everyone is very grateful. Everyone that's here tonight watching live, there's only love in the chat. People are very, very, like me, captivated by the truth and knowing what we are and just knowing where we are and a bit of getting in touch with the dream of life, leaving the bad vibrations of Babylon and realigning more. And we're on the way. It's on the way, but we got to keep on pushing. Stay positive.
All who watch these videos, download them. Download all the videos.
Yeah.
And re-upload them on YouTube channels. Spread it.
You have our permission.
Get the conversation out there, because the censorship is so powerful in the system. The only way to stop it is by you, the listener, you, the viewer. Download it, re-upload it, add your thing to it, or redo your videos. You make videos about these things. Put them up there, and reference it, Yanni. Reference us, because the occultists want us to all be forgotten. So in the forgotten of that mist, they could try and bump people off. I'm not joking. This is what they do.
Yeah.
So we got to keep it all out in the light. And the only way it's out in the light is you be there and push it out there. Don't sit around thinking, I just got my $1. Put that extra 4 hours in. Download it. Re-upload it. Make videos. Re-upload them. Right? Be busy on the internet for a small time every day or every week, and get outside. Work on your remedies with the living forests and gardens and kingdoms, and share that on the internet, and build networks of brothers and sisters who want to confront this self-obsession and get out of it. Right?
Yeah, man.
Life's
not a joke.
People shortly, all goes well.
Life's not a joke, and we're not clowns. So wake up and live. That's the message, and it's about the message. It's wake up and live. And Bob Marley said that. It's so easy, the message, wake up and live. But that can be very hard to process for some people. Some are slow learners also. We have to consider that. So in that state of mind, we will be back here next week.
Okay.
Okay, bye-bye. Ciao, everyone. And we're out. Rise and shine. Live your dreams.
Well, that's the
Forget
queen.
that.